Season 18 is here, and we've had plenty of time to actually practice out which are the best perks to choose for which character. We're going to be going over every single character in the tank, DPS, and support cast, going over each individual perk, when they're good, when they're bad, which perks to pick with which situation. If you guys don't know, my name is Spilo. I've been coaching Overwatch for 7 years, working within coaching people on how to use their perks for a long time since they've come out, and this is going to be our third perk guide updated for Season 18, including all of the new perks, all the new adjustments, talking about it from not just a low rank perspective, but also a high rank perspective. And I think the crucial thing to point out here is that as perks have kind of been iterated, it's gotten a lot trickier to decide which perks are best in which situations, because a lot of the just objectively bad perks that we had the first iteration are gone. There's a lot more nuance, a lot more debate, a lot more discussion, and I think that's a good thing. So what we're going to focus on today is I'm not going to tell you always what is objectively better. It's going to be more along the lines of what is going to make the most sense in different circumstances, and crucially, encouraging experimentation. Don't always follow my words to a T. Unlike other aspects of my educational stuff, my knowledge gap is not an expert's opinion. This is just an expert's best educated guess with the research surveying of higher level players and a lot of personal experience application. The highest priority for me today is explaining the intention of what the perk is supposed to do and where you're supposed to get value of it. So if you do find use for it, it will likely be used in this manner. Whether that manner is useful or optimal, I don't really know. That is definitely up to debate. And as I already mentioned, as the perks get better designed, there's going to be more of these that are up to debate. There's even a couple of heroes we'll talk about in a little bit where there's actually some serious debate at the professional level, which one is the best and in which circumstance. So if you're not sure which perk to choose, keep in mind that a lot of these characters, there isn't really a clear choice right now, and there may never be a clear choice. The good news is that the more debate that there is for a perk selection, the more likely that there isn't really a bad choice. The only time it's important to choose the right perk is when there's an objectively obvious choice, and if there's some nuance or discussion, the more important thing is that you're just using what the perk gives you and not that you're always making the right choice. For today's scaling, we're going to be focusing on giving a 1 to 3 on a level of instability volatility. So for a level 1, it means there's basically no debate. This perk selection is pretty much solved. It doesn't mean that there's necessarily one better perk. It just means that if you're in this situation, you should probably choose this perk. If you're in this situation, you should probably choose that perk. This is going to go from 2, where there's a little bit of indecision, nobody really quite knows, to 3, to where there's a lot of debate about which perk makes the most sense and which circumstances, and I'll kind of give a number assigned to each character so you can know to trust my opinions perfectly or to question whether what you should be doing in which situation. We're going to be starting off with tank, starting off with D.va. Now, D.va, what do I want to say here? I'm going to say this one's probably going to be a 2, where there's a little bit of debate, a little bit of testing left to be desired. However, it's pretty clear about which one you're going to be choosing in which circumstances most of the time. So we'll start off with the minors. This is going to be bunny power and extended boosters. So with bunny power, you're going to have more overhealth, more damage radius increase. We've talked about this one before. It's really good for using bomb aggressively and getting back into the mech, and even getting your bomb forced and then having to remech without really wanting to. It just is going to allow you to get back into that mech significantly more often. I would choose bunny power most of the time, especially if you're playing versus compositions or characters that are going to be able to close the distance and mess you up. At dive comps, dive tanks, brawl tanks, and so on, you're going to get a lot of value out of bunny power. Obviously, bigger call mech radius is also pretty funny. Extended boosters is useful if you're moving around a lot, but it kind of requires you to hit people with boosters, which is okay. But oftentimes, the way that you're using boosters is either strictly to reposition or to fly into a target and cancel the boosters to be able to finish up. So you don't really want to continue to booster in that situation anyway. So I could see it be useful in situations where you're flying through a lot of enemies and you just want to fly through them and maintain the boosters for longer. But it's going to be a little bit more niche. I think both minors are niche. Your mileage may vary. But I would generally recommend bunny power in most circumstances just because of the consistency of value tied to your ultimate. Heck, even when you don't even have your ultimate, being demeched and actually having a little bit more overhealth actually goes a long way. Moving on to major, and this is where there's going to be a lot of debate. So there's going to be a very clear niche in which one is which, but there's a very small chance that precision fusion is just better all the time. And this is the one where you're going to be pressing R to reduce your spread by 75% for 3 seconds. So I'll demonstrate precision fusion really quick. Basically what it means is you're using an additional cooldown, you can see it in the bottom right there, that allows you to do a little bit more damage from range. That's all you really need to know. It doesn't necessarily increase your damage up close, but it just allows you to apply more pressure at range for a brief period of time. This is really good if you're playing into counters like Mei, Reaper, Zarya, and just in general when you're playing at range, because D.va is just a lot more effective up close, but it gives you a little bit of counterplay similar to what Heavy Rockets did before by just allowing you to actually not have to get into people's faces to actually apply pressure. This is really good. It's consistently good. However, shield system is also good in certain circumstances. If you're off-angling a lot, flanking a lot, not playing with a lot of healing, having a little bit of extra shields, 150 150 shields that regenerate faster. So having more shields is good. 150 shields just means you're going to be regenerating more. But the more important thing is that the defense matrix is going to restore those shields immediately based off of the amount of damage that you're absorbing. So basically what this means is if you're taking a lot of damage, if you're relying a lot off of your, or not relying a lot off of your supports, you're going to be able to keep yourself healthy a lot more often. And the way that I see this consistently being used is just D.va spread out. D.va on dive, D.va on Ilios, D.va on Watchpoint Gibraltar, D.va when she's already either in your face or just basically by herself, where she doesn't always want the more damage, she wants the more survivability. And there's a lot of things to Matrix. In that situation, shield system is pretty good. So if you're basically playing isolated, a lot of dive, a lot of verticality, shield system can actually be pretty good if you know how to use it. Otherwise, precision fusion is probably going to be your choice. And for the vast majority of situations where you're playing D.va on a flat map, playing D.va versus counters, playing D.va on not an optimal map, precision fusion is just going to be able to provide a lot more value. All right, Doomfist time. So Doomfist got a minor adjustment on his minor perks. 1-2, hitting an enemy into a wall with Rocket Punch, reloads hand and cannon, overfills by 2. So this is what I'm going to be focusing on because that is a change previously where just hitting a punch refilled your ammo. However, this one is crucial because it actually overfills your ammo. So it's a little bit more niche in a weird way where you actually have to hit somebody into a wall, which I don't like all that much. However, if you do hit them into a wall, I can dump my clip completely out and I actually get 6 ammo. So I actually overfill my ammo. So if you're consistently hitting people on the walls, even just on uncharged tap punches, this perk is really, really good for your damage uptime. A lot of Doomfist damage is actually not through abilities, but it's primary fire. So I think this perk is actually the more consistent value one. And then in terms of survival of the fittest, this one is still okay if you're not getting a lot of big wall punches. But I think just for general uptime, if you're hitting anything into a wall, just being able to do consistent more damage is better. Now, for Major, enemies hit by a second slam are slowed by 30% for 1.5 seconds. Basically, the way to simplify this for Doomfist is if you are playing versus a lot of CC, like on a Sleep Dart, Cassidy's Hinder, and so on, then you should probably run Power Matrix. It is nerfed a little bit to where it doesn't charge faster. It used to have an accelerated charge rate because of the way the damage reduction was working. But if you're not playing versus a lot of CC or crazy burst damage, you probably should just run Aftershock because the slow from Aftershock means you're going to be able to hit your follow-up punches and your follow-up shots significantly easier. It's about the follow-up to the slam that matters. Slam's damage still sucks, but if you hit a slam, you're much more lethal than you were before. So the TLDR is that if you're playing into burst damage, if you're playing into CC that you can eat with Power Matrix, always choose Power Matrix. Otherwise, always choose Aftershock. Now, in terms of which perk is better here, I'd say Doomfist, it's pretty clear. I'm going to give this 101. Follow my advice. I know there'll be a little bit of disagreement with the minor perks, but I honestly don't think it really matters that much. Okay, Hazard, we're going to also put Hazard at a 1. Pretty solved. Minor perk here is there's been some reshuffling here. Deep Leap means your range and speed of your jump is increased by 15%. Anarchic Zeal means that your block gains 25% lifesteal, which is just healing you while you're doing damage. I'm gonna be honest, this one's easy. Pick Deep Leap all the time. Speed matters. Range matters. Having a little of lifesteal is nice, but it does significantly lower healing than you think, especially because they just nerfed Spike Guard's damage. Or no, that's something else. No, they didn't nerf it. But regardless, it's still not enough. Now, the majors where there's a little bit of situational choices here. Bone Spur, it's marked targets with spikes, quick melee, and violent leap slash detonates them for 40 explosive damage. I'll demonstrate that really fast. It's not quite as strong as you'd think. Basically, when you hit enough shots on a target, you're going to see that little mark on them, which means when I hit my melee, that's going to do an extra 40 damage. That's useful, but it's only useful on sustained duels. Tank trades, somebody that's actively getting healing, and then eventually you're able to mark them and dash in. It's good, it's just not nearly as OP as you think it is. Conversely, you have Reconstitution, which is kind of in a similar boat where you're going to be basically giving yourself more Spike Guard charge if you hit somebody with wall, so I get more block resource. Before, this was really broken because it would use my Spike Guard resource from my normal meter first, then use the bonus resource. So you could just sit on it forever until you really needed it, which made it really easy to charge and use. Now it's going to be using that bonus charge first, so it's a little bit weaker than it used to be. To be honest, if you're taking extended tank trades or extended duels with DPS and your face is not getting blown off, then Explosive Impalements is probably going to be your choice here. However, if there's a lot of high pressure output, your downtime is very high because there's a lot of damage, and so you're going in for big bursts and then trying to block and trying to live. Reconstitution is going to be really good because just having more block, having more defensive capability, having more mitigation really matters. So if you're able to have a lot of uptime, Explosive Impalements feels good. If not, pick Reconstitution, but always choose Anarchic Zeal. No, I'm sorry, always choose Deep Leap. Shoot. I was trying to demonstrate the other one. Always choose Deep Leap. Okay, so Jungle Queen got a big shakeup here, but again, this one's going to be really simple. Please always choose Rampant Charge. You gain Unstoppable and refresh all cooldowns when using Rampage. What this means is if you're familiar with the Mauga's run animation where you can't be CC'd, that's what she gets during her ult. You can't be CC'd, can't be slept, you can't be canceled. You just go in, unstoppable, unCCable, whatever. The really valuable part, though, is not just the invulnerability, it's the fact that you can use Shout, Carnage, Chop, Ult, and you just get it all again. And it's one of those ult perks where, like, ult perks are always a bit risky because it's not consistent value, it's burst value when you have your ultimate, but this one makes her ultimate so much better and so much more consistent. You need to choose it basically every time without exception. Now, the majors are a little bit interesting. Savage Satiation, we've talked about it, you get more lifesteal from your chop, which is really good if you're in an extended frontline war versus brawl tanks. However, Willy Willy's not bad, and if you're not really taking these consistent carnage trades with the frontline, you're getting an extra 30 damage from your Jagged Blade, and you're getting an extra 30 damage even if you don't even hit the target, because the hitbox is just a little bit broader. So you're going to be getting, that doesn't really demonstrate because I don't have it, but basically you're just going to be able to hit, like that 30 damage applies even when I stick the target. So if you're hitting a lot of knives on targets, the extra 30 damage helps changes a lot of breakpoints here. So like if I'm just using my knife here, like that's just from my blade. Like that's half his HP bar. So if I combine that with any damage, that's actually really good. So in a nice way, Willy Willy is going to help you a little bit more at a distance, even if you're not hitting the blade. So if I miss the blade entirely like this here, and it comes back, that's on an armored target. That's not terrible. That's a decent chip damage, more so than it was before. So if you're not really getting up in people's faces, Willy Willy is kind of like the no-brainer. Big broad up laps, Willy Willy is the no-brainer. Otherwise, just use Savage Satiation if anything's in your face. By the way, I forgot to mention, Junkrat Queen I'd probably say is like a 1. I think Junkrat's pretty straightforward, pretty solved. Now, Mauga, I would say, is maybe closer to a 2, just because there's a little bit of controversy around his minor perks, because I think Kinetic Bandolier is a little bit underrated. If you're moving around a lot, the reload animation with Mauga is kind of long, and is a little bit inconvenient. So being able to reload ammo while charging, especially if you're moving around a lot, is pretty darn convenient, especially when you combine it with something like Firewalker. We'll get to that one in a little bit. However, I think Pyromaniac is probably going to be a little bit more consistent, just because using your gun at a distance on a squishy is going to give you 50 over health. Now, crucially, that's done even if you don't crit, because if you look at his passive, you gain temporary health when dealing critical damage. So if you're either hitting crits because something's burning, well, with Kinetic Bandolier, or excuse me, with Pyromaniac, you don't need to crit. You can get overhealth, if you look at the bottom left, just from body shotting somebody. If you set them on fire, I immediately just jump up 50 overhealth. Now, that's not a lot, but crucially, you can do it at any range, and a little bit goes a long way with this character. So what it does is it encourages you to poke from a distance. You set them on fire, and you can crit them with your right gun. So it's good, it's useful, it's something. It's a little bit of extra sustain with overhealth. It's not shabby. If you're not moving around a ton, Pyromaniac is probably good, but honestly, really either one can work. Major is pretty simple. Just choose Firewalker. Combat Fuel is nice. You get a lot of critical hits will charge up your Cardiac so that you get a little bit of bonus overhealth when you pop Cardiac. But Cardiac's more useful for the damage reduction than it is for the overhealth. So while the overhealth is nice, it's opportunity costing the value of Firewalker, which is just so incredibly good. To demonstrate what Firewalker does, I want you to keep in mind that this is just from running through these targets. This is not from shooting them or slamming them. So I'll choose Firewalker. I run through them. And that's just from running past them. Just from running past them. Now you combine that with Firewalker and then a slam. So let me burn these guys down. And you have an opportunity for high risk, high reward engages, or even low risk, low reward engages, like as the fights evolve. It just becomes insane. Chip damage on the slam, not even a crit slam. And these are 250 robots that are almost dead. So just being able to combine the ability to overrun and then slam something and then shoot them afterwards is just insane. Almost always choose Firewalker. There's no real reason. If you're not getting value to Firewalker, you're probably not playing Mauga right. All right, Orisa. I'm going to say this one's a 2. Pretty controversial depending on certain situations, but I think your mileage may vary, but I don't think it's a huge choice. So for me, I'm going to go with Defense Protocol anytime I'm under a lot of heat and I don't need to move around a lot. So if it's a relatively congested map, they're playing a lot of anti-tank characters, I want to be able to pop my ult without dying. Now, I am fortified during my Terror Surge, but being able to regenerate 100 health while I'm fortified is a big deal. And keep in mind, Terror Surge lasts a long time. So I won't demonstrate the perk, but that is like, what, 500 healing, I think, if we're not counting the DPS passive. That's a lot of sustain. You just basically can't die during your Terror Search or the defense protocol, and that's really, really valuable. So if you find yourself under a lot of pressure, you're the point of contention, defense protocol is going to feel pretty good. Now, that being said, mobile fortification is a really interesting reversion. Touching the bot, think of this up. While Fortify is active, Orisa has no movement speed reduction and no heat generation, which means when you're fortifying, your gun does not overheat and you do not slow down. Now, this is how Fortify used to be. They changed it, but now you can get it back if you burn a perk slot on it. So if you're moving around a lot, and if you're not the point of contention, this one is freaking amazing. You can bully tanks, you can bully backline, you can bully DPS, you can increase your DPS uptime. There's all sorts of things that you can do with this perk. It's not going to change your life, but it's going to significantly improve your pressure output if you know how to use it. So basically, it really depends on whether if you're the point of focus for the enemy team or not with which minor perk you choose. Major, again, situational. If you're moving around a lot with Orisa, Protected Barrier is pretty good. It's kind of an opportunity cost to lose Javelin Spin, which is a really, really good cooldown for moving, defensive mitigation, and so on. But a shield's probably going to be a little bit better if you're not moving around a whole lot. If you are moving around a whole lot, depending on the map, Charged Javelin is just objectively better, because being able to charge Energy Javelin, increasing its knockback, making it travel faster, and piercing enemies, it's free value. You don't even have to use it if you don't want to. You don't have to charge up every Javelin. You can just untap your Javelin and get the same value. But if you want to charge it, which is usually going to be at farther distances or starting peaks, like the fight's about to start, here we go, enter, right? Then having a charged Javelin is free value and it's good to use. It's just not always going to be the most optimal play if you're basically standing in the same spot. Shield may give you more value there. Okay, Ram. Again here, this one is just pretty simple. So this one's, there's no debate. We're going to give this one a 1. Voids are just, this is the play. You're just going to be doing a lot more damage with your Omnic form, whether you're shooting shields, shooting tanks, shooting squishies, you're going to be doing noticeably more damage on those targets, especially if you hit your shots. Whereas Relentless form is rewarding you by extending your Nemesis form, also extending your Annihilation, your ultimate, when you secure eliminations. The problem with elimination securing perks is that they're extremely situational. And a lot of times in Overwatch, securing elimination is more often than not to win the fight. It doesn't necessarily, it's more of a snowballing thing, similar to some of Genji's perks back in the day, that isn't always good for consistent value. In addition to that, remember perks are always opportunity costs. So when you're choosing Relentless form, you're guaranteeing that you're going to get a pick. You're going to get a trade with your ult. You're guaranteeing that you're going to need the extended duration to keep that fight going. And you're also saying that I don't need the additional damage from my Omnic form. And that just generally isn't the play. Omnic form is very important for Ramattra, especially nowadays. And the extra consistent damage output is just way too good. Relentless form is just not worth picking under any circumstances. Same thing is going to be going over the Major, although I'll give a little bit more slack with this one because there are some windows where you could get value. Nanite Repair allows you to vortex your feet and give yourself 75 healing per second, which if you're blocking, again, like Orisa's ult heal, it's gonna increase your survivability, especially when you're already damage reduction yourself. The problem with that is that's really only going to be useful when there's a tank directly in your face, which may not always be the play. And again, opportunity cost. Ravenous Vortex here is something that you can use on range. It does more damage, and it also helps kill enemy momentum. So not only is it a better version of Vortex because it's more consistent to apply, it's a better version of Vortex because it's better CC, and it's also more damage. And so even if you're using it on a tank, it's still better than the original Vortex. If you're using it on a backline, it's insanely better. If you're using it on a DPS that's midway apart, it's insanely good, and you just use it on demand. It just makes your output of pressure, whether you're in Nemesis form or whether you're in Omnic form, significantly more consistent. There's just not enough reason to choose Nanite Repair 9 times out of 10. Okay, Rein. Rein got some interesting changes. I think his minor perks, again, I'll give this one a 3. I think there's a lot of testing that needs to be done with Reinhardt to decide which one makes the most sense. I think they're very situational. Sadly, he lost Crusader's Resolve. I think that was a really unfortunate change because that allowed Rein to open up more off angles, to be a little bit more self-sufficient when not stacked on main. And he was given a perk that I think is just really underwhelming, to be honest. Barrier Recharge allows you to regenerate your shield for 150 per second while you're charging. So if you get a nice, long, juicy charge, you can regenerate your shield for the entirety of this, which is, like, fine, but from a design perspective, I don't think Rein leaning more and more and more into shield is good. So is it okay? Yeah. It's fine, I would say you would probably pick this in similar circumstances where you choose Crusader's Resolve. In other words, off-angling, moving around a lot with your pin. But if you're playing more frontline focused, you're not off-angling as much, I would probably choose Crusade's Fire, because every pin that you hit, every shadow that you hit, you're getting more fire strikes. And fire strikes are more valuable when you're in a small space. And you're going to be hitting more people with your pin and with your shatter when you're in a small space. So you're going to have probably more consistent value from Crusader's Fire in small spaces. Moving on from that, I think the major perks are even more situational, because I think there's a good argument for both. So Shield Slam, I will say, I'm going to use similar metrics for both of these. Basically, if you're in a small space, Ignited Fury is going to feel really good. So this is a new perk that's going to increase your attack speed for every fire strike that you hit. And basically what this means is you're not going to increase your attack speed, you're going to increase your duration. So if I hit one fire strike, let me demonstrate this really fast. I'm going to get 25 attack speed for 2 seconds. Bam. If I hit 2 people with it, I'm going to increase my attack speed for 4 seconds. But noticeably, I cannot stack my attack speed past 25%. All it does is increases the duration. That being said, you're going to have a pretty decent uptime of this if you're hitting a lot of fire strikes on main, whether that's in the enemy tank or the enemy backline. So more attack speed equals faster swinging, equals faster fire strikes, equals faster everything. And that's pretty nice. Now, it's not movement speed, which probably would have been a lot more powerful and maybe a little bit broken, but attack speed is still nice. So again, if you're hitting a lot of fire strikes, if you're stacked on the main, if you're not off-angling up, Ignited Fury is going to feel good. That being said, Shield Slam is nice because it allows you to do a small amount of damage without actually dropping your shield, and can help finish off combos, help you finish off 1v1s. I would, again, probably tie Shield Slam to Barrier Recharge. If you're off-angling in a lot, if you're playing more of the distraction Reinhardt and not just smashing people's face in on main, then having the ability to do damage without dropping your shield is probably pretty useful. It can even be used with a couple of little techs. We're not going to go into those today. But if a lot of fight is happening on main, especially with the buff the projectile speed that Fire Strike has nowadays, Crusader's Fire plus Ignited Fury is just going to allow for a lot more frontline, a lot more damage, a lot more consistent pressure from Rein. Okay, Roadhog. So I did my research with this one. I'm going to give this one a 2 because there's been a little bit of disagreement with the minor perk. I've seen both. My take with Roadhog is he's a very tempo-focused character where he has a huge spike in value around his hook. When he doesn't have hook, he may not have as much damage uptime. Now, I think that's probably going to change a little bit today with the perk. He's going to have a lot more damage output, so you're going to see a little bit more damage uptime. But with the lower uptime, it's hard to decide which one's more valuable because you're thinking, oh, well, if I don't have a lot of uptime between hooks, why do I need scrap hook? I don't need the reload for 2 ammo, right? But then you could also say, well, if I don't have a lot of uptime between hook cycles, why would I need more alt fire when I'm going to be using my alt fire selectively anyway? My personal opinion is that if you are playing versus something that you can consistently poke, and you're actually like doing good consistent damage with your alt fire, it's a no-brainer to choose Shrapnel Launcher. However, if a lot of it comes down to those clutch moments that you're not really getting a lot of damage output, you can't reach a lot of targets, but you need to hit the hook on that Doomfist or the hook on that Tracer, you probably should just choose Scrap Hook because just being able to consistently hit the one shot off of your hook is so incredibly important. And if you're wasting time because, oh no, I hit the hook, but I didn't have the melee or didn't have the ammo, that's like a huge problem. So if you are more burst value focused, maybe dive targets, maybe something that you're not really able to get consistent poke on anyway, then Scrap Hook is going to feel pretty good. Otherwise, I would be choosing Shrapnel Launcher. I did my research on this one. I watched a lot of different Hog players, not just streamers, but also pro players, and there was a little bit of inconsistency with what I was seeing. And I was also, even when they were choosing Scrap Hook, I wasn't really seeing consistent value from it either. It's more of an uptime thing, but then Shrapnel Launcher compromises your uptime by just making your uptime more valuable. So do you value your alt fire? That's going to be really a decision when it comes to this perk. Now, major perk, a little bit simpler. Pulled pork, just not quite good enough. Like Invigorate is just going to allow you to take more aggressive positions. It's going to allow you to rotate. It's going to get you out of bad positions a lot easier. Essentially, speed is survivability, and it's a lot more of that survivability than pulled pork. Having more overhealth is cool, but being able to get out of a bad situation with a 30% speed boost is a lot more important. Always choose this perk, 0 exceptions. Sigma! So, really only one thing to note out here, which is that hyper regeneration, which means more damage on your experimental barrier's health. This is okay. The tricky thing to note in really whether you should be using this perk or not is how much cleave am I getting. And by cleave, I mean, am I hitting multiple targets with one volley? That, editor, remove that. Basically, if I'm hitting multiple targets with one volley, then I'm getting more DPS. If I'm not hitting multiple targets with one volley, or I'm just hitting a shield, then I'm not really doing very high DPS. Now, the reason why that matters is because you get 50% of the damage that you do restored to your shield's health. But it's only damage on targets, and crucially, Sigma's single target DPS is really not good. So this one is very, very bad if you're shooting one target or shooting a shield. It's significantly worse than Kinetic Cycle, which just means a lot more accretions. However, if you are getting consistent cleave, hitting 2, 3 splash damages on target, getting big value on your primary fire, you'd be surprised at the amount of shield health and uptime that will come as a result of this perk, but it is going to be very situational off of that. I'll give this character a 2 in terms of controversy. I know I've not been able to do that consistently, but yeah. Hyper Strike, Levitation, same thing as Season 17. A lot of verticality in the map, Levitation good. Brawl Tank in your face, or any other circumstance for that matter, Hyper Strike is better because not only does it knock them away, it also does more damage. Okay, Winston. Obviously the new barrier toss, we'll talk about that one in a second, but heavy landing's still good. More damage on your primal is pretty decent. It's not as big of a spike as some of the other ultimate perks, which is why we're going to talk about barrier toss. For the major perks, we'll talk about those really, really quickly. If you're playing versus characters that explode your bubble, specifically counters, Chain Lightning is a no-brainer. Allows you to actually pressure these targets from outside of their effective range and do pretty decent damage. Revitalizing Barrier, if your barrier is not exploding, you get to heal yourself for 30 health per second. It's great. It's ult charge. It is ult charge for you. It's a sustainability for you as well, and there's a new UI for it. I'll show that case really fast here. So check this out. It's pretty, you know, it's good. Basically, if you're playing versus dive targets or characters that aren't exploding your bubble, this perk is probably the more consistent perk. But if any other circumstance versus characters that are blowing up your bubble, counters, whatever, Chain Lightning is just going to be consistently better. Now, the one to talk about is Barrier Toss, and this is why I'm going to give Winston a 1.5. I think you're probably just going to choose Heavy Landing most of the time, and situationally Chain Lightning, Revitalizing Barrier, but Barrier Toss hasn't been experimented around a lot with because it does change a little bit how you use your bubble. Now, crucially, it does not allow you to eat your bubble. That's about as far as it can go, and that's with giving it the furthest throw that I can with a downhill. It just doesn't, you're not going to be bubbling your backline like people thought when they read the patch notes, including me. What it is going to do, it's going to allow for a little bit more damage uptime versus characters with CC. So if you guys have played a lot of Winston, you know that timing the bubble off of your jump is tricky because you kind of want that landing damage, but you also can get CC'd right as you're entering. So sometimes you have to bubble early and then they walk away from your bubble and you can't damage anymore. If you play versus a good Brig or a good Ana, you're going to struggle with these things. This kind of removes that counterplay because you could just go flying in and the bubble moves with you. Check this out. I bubbled back here and the bubble followed me here. So the bubble stays like right at my nose and moves with me. So I'm unable to be CC'd really until I've landed. So if you're playing versus really good CC characters and having a hard time doing damage, you want to get your landing damage, you're getting CC'd a lot, this perk can really help with that. The problem with this perk is it's not immediately obvious consistently how to use it. There's a lot of situations where it can be hard to use. I misplaced it versus a Cassidy. It might even change up your muscle memory a little bit. So let's just put it this way. The reason why I give this a 1.5 is I think this perk is going to be experimented more a little bit, but there are certain circumstances where it actually makes sense, especially because its competition, heavy landing, is something that only really comes up during your ultimate and doesn't always significantly increase the amount of damage you're doing with your ultimate either. So experiment with it. It's definitely situational, but there's a chance that this one could be better than people think. Okay, Wrecking Ball. So Wrecking Ball, again, pretty much the same. If you're spending winning on tank, Steamroller is really good. If you're not spending winning on tank and not getting multiple crits on tank, Pack Rat significantly increases your uptime. That being said, the major perks are a little bit different. We don't have the shield sharing perk, which I think is a little bit of an underrated perk, but obviously competing with hang time is tough. It does a lot more damage, especially on more static targets. It's just a lot of damage, right? But Adaptive Barrier is interesting because you're going to generate a 1.5 second barrier on activation, consuming 50 overhealth, which basically means that you get a little bit less overhealth from your shields. However, you have a barrier that means that you cannot be CC'd for 1.5 seconds, or unless they break the shield. Watch. You see that? That is CC immunity. Now, crucially, they can break it. They can break it. So you will need to time it relatively well because 1.5 seconds is a long time. I wouldn't really even call it a parry, to be honest with you. However, it allows you to punish CC characters that aren't being thoughtful about the timing of when they're using their CC. The good news to Hamster is if you're being counterpicked by people that are swapping to Ana and Cassidy and Sombra, most of the time those people don't really have a brain when it comes to timing their CC anyway, so you can really punish brainless CC with this shield. It's just really, really, really good. And yes, we'll loop the barrier also cleanses as well. So I think this one again is a no-brainer. You're playing versus a lot of CC, it's just really freaking good. It's not infinite CC immunity, it's just timed CC immunity, but that alone is really good because as all Wrecking Ball players know, you have a lot of other tools of playing around CC if you're really smart with it and able to outbrain the competition. So choose the other perk unless playing a CC, then choose that perk instead. Okay, Zarya, I'm gonna give this one another 1.5. I think this one is pretty straightforward, but there are some exceptions to the rule. So she has one of the most powerful perks in the game right now with energy converter, which means that every alt fire that you do, you're gonna be doing 3 charge per target that you hit. Now, most of the time, reasonably, you're gonna be hitting 1 target, if even that. However, the reason why this perk is so strong is because it pauses your energy decay. So not only are you consistently hitting alt fire, you building more energy, that's great, but you're actually pausing the decay as well. So it's more like 4 or even 5 energy if you're consistently hitting your alt fire. And as I said, if you're cleaning multiple targets, you're getting more energy. One of Zarya's problems is certain compositions, especially from range, can be very challenging to generate energy on. That problem is significantly smaller now because having high uptime with your charge is just so much easier. Now, situations in which you choose this perk 95% of the time. However, there are still circumstances where jump ups is good because it is a good perk. Having more secondary fire self-knockback means that you can go really high on a lot of maps where going really high is more valuable than even having charge. So I would say jump ups, energy converter, you're gonna need to experiment with these. On maps that you always choose jump ups, a lot of verticality, you're gonna probably still choose jump ups, but you might wanna try once with energy converter and see how it goes. Is losing the ability to position easily worth it if you're just gonna be a higher charge? That's kind of the question when you're deciding on which perks, and that's why your mileage may vary. Now, for the major perk, I think there's a little bit less, it's a little bit easier because Energy Lance is just kind of free value if the enemy team is stacked, especially for a lot of my viewers, it may be gold, plat, diamond. You're gonna have fewer spread out, super chaotic dive comps. You're gonna have people that are generally playing together. And now that you're gonna be 50 energy more often as a result of energy converter, you're gonna be hitting multiple targets more often. This is one of those perks that you don't even necessarily need to try to get value out of. It just kind of happens. The support standing a little bit too close to the tank. Mei is stacked with Ram. You're just going to be hitting up both of them at the same time without even really trying. Now, the question is, when do you not choose Energy Lance? And that one is a little easier because anytime where there aren't stacked enemies, dive comps, very broad open maps, Spotter is also kind of just free value, right? Backline's dealing with dive targets. This gives him health regeneration, which it's not a lot, but think of it as like an extra 20-40 healing for the duration that the bubble lasts. But the movement speed is the more important one, and this one is also really good for teammates that are going in aggressively Genjis, Reapers. We're in a big Reaper meta right now, so you're playing with a Reaper, giving them that little burst of healing, the CC immunity, which they already have, but more importantly, the movement speed is a big, big, big deal. But this, again, is also really useful for peeling off your backline for movement speed for the health regeneration. So I would say clumped up enemies, teammates are safe, and you're the big focus, Energy Lance 100%. If you have an aggressive teammate, or you have got an aggressive backline, or backline that's getting aggressed on, Spotter is the obvious choice here. Are we good? Is that it for tanks? Do we keep going? We keep going. Let's talk about the damage dealers, starting off with Ashe. So Ashe got a couple of interesting changes. One big change worth highlighting here, which is gonna be remote detonator, which is using your dynamite, pressing it again causes it to detonate after a 0.5 second delay. Now, everyone initially looked at this and said, oh, this is just, you know, easier to hit your dynamites for the low ranked players that can't use it. But I think this is like a really simplistic way of looking at it. One of the things that I did with this character is you think about dynamite differently, just a little bit differently. You look at it as a burst combo where you can actually just 2-tap things significantly faster because you can actually detonate the dynamite and hit a shot at the same time. You can use dynamite behind walls. You can throw a dynamite and look away and shoot something else. It's also a huge quality of life change in situations where you don't really want to scope in. How many times have you been dove by a Genji, thrown a dynamite in your feet and just you know, like, no, those days are gone. Like, you can actually use the dynamite, look at the Genji, detonate it manually, and the delay makes it so that you still have to get the timing right, but I think this one is really slept on. I was able to coach a couple of high-rank Ashe players after this was released, and seeing them use this perk and coaching them on how to use this perk better was really cool. There were multiple fights over the course of the game that were significantly shifted because of this perk. So I would say There is a world where Sidewinder can be useful, creating more distance, but even in like dive defense, I'm starting to think that remote detonator might just be the choice. So I'm gonna give Ashe like a 1.5. Like I'm fairly certain that this is the right way to play, but I'm open to being wrong with this one. In terms of the majors, there's definitely worth highlighting that Airburst has a little bit more value with remote detonator because it's a lot easier to land those bigger dynamites, and getting the ammo back is also really nice as well. That being said, unless you're getting like these big AoE clumps, Viper Sting is just more damage. It just means 2 consecutive scope shots. I'll kind of demonstrate it. We've talked about it before, but it's just 1. You get a little 25 extra damage. That adds up. That changes break points, and it also crucially reloads 2 ammo, again with a character that has problems with ammo. So both Airburst and Viper Sting give you ammo, but I like the 25 extra damage in terms of the consistency with Ashe, and I would generally recommend running this perk most of the time. Okay, let's talk about Bastion. Bastion's freaking easy. We'll give this 101. Sad to say, Armored Artillery is dead. It's a cool perk. It's really not even a bad perk. It significantly increases the value and interest that his ultimate has. So the problem is his configuration reload is insane. I feel like wrong about telling low rank Bastions how good your character is because I'm sorry, tank players. But holy crap. Let me just demonstrate this. This is insane. Nade. 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 And if you want to ult, nade! It's insane! So not only are we talking about crazy damage, which by the way, as you get better at Bastion, you start to realize that your nade is even more important than your turret in terms of damage up. Like, it's just so good in duels and 1v1s and squishies and so on. But heck, even rolling out from spawn is better. You nade yourself. You nade yourself. You nade yourself. And you nade yourself. And you've got a rollout that like is as good as like a freaking Genji, you know what I'm saying? So it's just really good in a lot of little weird situations for repositioning, for self-defense. Nade crucially is super flexible, so if you've ever had a hard time versus Genjis and Tracers and other characters, Nade is like the great equalizer for like being able to beat those characters in duels because of the splash damage and so on. So I obviously the self-damage is kind of a bummer, but my goodness, this perk is probably one of the strongest perks in the game, certainly one of the strongest minor perks in the game. Now, in terms of the majors, it's more of the same. If you're off-angling and flanking a lot or under a lot of pressure, self-repair is amazing. If you're not off-angling and not flanking a lot, and you're getting a lot of healing and you're kind of having a hard time contributing at range, Lindholm Explosives was also amazing. It just is really, really good at dealing with sniper characters because you don't have a head hit shot. You don't have a head when you're doing this, so you can destroy snipers, but when you're turreting, you do basically no damage at range. And then Lindholm Explosives changes that. So there's pretty clear situations, maps, Circuit Royale. If I'm forcing Bastion into like Widow, I'm going to play Lindholm Explosives and I'm just going to murk her from across the map, right? But if I'm angling, if I'm getting dove or the map's broad, I need this self-repair. So you'll probably choose self-repair, I'd say about 90% of the time. But those niches where there's no real dive characters, the map is pretty narrow, you're going to find Lindholm Explosives value to be really good. Cassidy. All right, so this one's going to be pretty controversial. I'm going to keep this one at 2. Because this one is relatively debated, but I'm fairly confident I'm correct with this one. First one, choose Bang Bang on minor. It's crazy this is a minor perk. It's just free value with your flashbang. It's more damage, it's more range. Even the odds is cool, it's just not strong enough. So all ult perks have to be strong enough to justify the choice because you're losing consistent value, and I just don't think even the odds is one of those ult perks worth choosing. However, major perk, I think the choice is pretty simple. Are you in need of Fan the Hammer versus the enemy tank? Winston in your face, Mauga in your face, Bastion's taking these short-range flanks, you just want to melt the guy. Or, I mean, anything, right? Anything that you're going to melt with Fan the Hammer, you're going to want Gunslinging. Even like a CC ball, really good, right? In which case, you're going to choose Gunslinging because why not? Free value, free roll resets. However, I've been coaching a lot of Cassidy since perks have come out. And the amount of times where Gunslinging's roll reset has held relevance is way lower than you think. Way, way lower than you think. Not because people aren't hitting crits. It's just that the relevance of getting that reload isn't always as high as you think. Because the value of roll, if you're not actively being pressured, isn't always super high. It's more of a, I need it right now, and then I may not need it for a little bit of time. It's a fine perk, but Silver Bullet, when you don't need your Fan the Hammer, is really good. And I'll explain why this is, because I think there's a little bit of misinformation or misunderstanding of what this perk is actually supposed to do. Crucially, Silver Bullet does not increase your headshot damage. It does the exact same, you can even see here, I think, okay, maybe you can't, but it does the exact same amount of damage as a normal headshot. So why choose it? Because it's not just about the silver bullet itself, it's about what the bullet leaves behind, which is 70 or 75 damage over time. So to showcase, this is a headshot, this is a silver bullet headshot. And the reason why this matters so much is because that's a decent amount more damage, right? 50% more damage, we'll take that, right? The real reason why this matters, though, is because Cassidy is heavily affected by fall off, but Silver Bullet is not. Now, the initial bullet damage of Silver Bullet absolutely is. The DOT, not at all. So you go from a situation where Silver Bullet will increase your bullet damage by 50% to where Silver Bullet will triple the amount of damage that you do with a bullet from range, or even quadruple. Now, you're thinking, well, how often do I really want 75 damage at range? That's a good point, but any situation where you're being outranged by a composition and you want to be able to win duels at range, a Silver Bullet is just objectively the better choice to choose. Now, if you are not fighting at those ranges and you do have tanks and stuff in your face, maybe even 6v6, you're gonna have more tanks in your face, sure. Don't worry about Silver Bullet. Silver Bullets, you don't need it. You need that fan the hammer. However, if that's not the circumstance, it's just going to help you significantly more. And crucially, your roll does reset the Silver Bullet. So let me actually kill this bot real fast and kind of demonstrate what you could do here. Now I'm gonna body shot here, because crucially, that's, let's be honest, okay? We're body shot, okay? So body shot here. Don't roll right away, because that will reset the DOT and wipe it. And that's almost a 2-shot at this range. For context, if I were to just shoot my gun at this range, I don't even take a third of the HP off. So you do need to hit the shot. You can quick scope it. You don't have to sit there and scope in. So I might go pop, right? And it cleaves. The cleave is more of an accidental value, let's be honest. It's never something that you're actually going for. But yeah, range, good. And it does apply the DPS passive, yes. Okay, Echo. I'm gonna give this one a 3. I'm gonna give this one a 3. This is the first one that I think I've given a very controversial rating because your mileage is going to vary wildly. And this is a good thing because I actually think our perks are a lot better. And so I don't think there's really a wrong choice with this. So let's talk about the minors first. Focus Rush, Focusing Beam's range is increased by 4 meters and your movement speed is increased by 10%. Huge. If you're moving around a lot with Echo, if you're diving around a lot, you're repositioning a lot of Echo, I think you're going to like this perk. And from what my limited research went into, I think this one is just probably going to be slightly better. Because anytime that you're using your beam, you're just harder to hit and you can finish off kills more often. It's just consistent value. Remember, if we're going to choose an ult perk, it needs to be really good. Now, to be clear, Partial Scan, if you're not moving around a lot, it's pretty darn good. It basically guarantees that whoever you copy, you're going to get an ultimate with that copy. So don't think this perk is bad. It's not. It's quite good. I just don't think it's going to be quite as good as Focused Rush most of the time, especially with how often Echo repositions most of the time with the way the character is designed. Now, your mileage may vary. There's some nuance there, but I think the minor perks are probably the least controversial. Now, the interesting one is Full Salvo versus High Beams. So for context, that's normal stickies, okay? So this is an armored target, so just keep that in mind. This is with Full Salvo. Now what they did is they removed the damage penalty from that Full Salvo used to have, and now it just does a lot more damage. Now, you're like, well, why would I not choose Full Salvo? Again, it's always opportunity cost. You're gonna be doing more consistent damage with your Full Salvo if you hit all the stickies, or if you hit most of the stickies. Your stickies are going to do more damage if you hit most or all the stickies. Now, the challenging part is what if you don't? What if the targets are moving around a lot? What if it's difficult to land on them? Well, then, yeah, it's going to be tricky. That being said, more often than not, when I was watching higher level play, I saw Full Salvo being picked just because the consistency of hitting generally a little bit more damage to the stickies most of the time. Now, the troublesome part is I actually do see a world where high beams can be used. Let me give you guys an example. I was able to use this perk off stream once. I was playing on a sniper map, I believe it was more Rialto. And it was basically setting up hard flanks. And I would combine Focus Rush with high beams. I'd drop into the backline, I'd full sticky beam because it couldn't get away in time, and I'd fly out. And I would use flight at the stage, and I'd use flight to get out because I get a reset for every elimination. The problem with high beams is not that that gameplay loop isn't legitimate. The problem is that if you do not get the elimination, you do not get the reset. Now, crucially, you don't have to finish the kill with the beam. It just has to be within, I think, the last 2 or 3 seconds. I don't know the exact timing, but you do have to use beam within a couple of seconds of the kill actually happening. So it doesn't have to be you finished with it. You can finish with a shot, you know, and you'll still get the reset. But you do have to use the beam at some point during the last couple of seconds. So there's just too many hoops to kind of jump through. If you get a full sticky kill, that's not necessarily going to reset. That's not going to reset your flight. If you don't get the kill, it's not going to reset your flight. And remember, with opportunity cost, it's like, man, do I really want to give up the full salvo? I would say focus rush full salvo probably most of the time. However, I can see a world where playing for this hard flank assassination build with high beams could work, and I could see a world where partial scan also works as well. That's going to be my general recommendation. And there's probably going to be some smarter people, more experienced echo mains out there that are going to be able to try that out and give you a better recommendation. But for right now, that's what I would recommend. Okay, Freja. So she got smashed, nerfed, like pretty bad. I'm going to give this one like a 2 in terms of, I'm pretty sure. Hunter's Instinct direct hits with take aim. Reveal enemies for 3 seconds. I did not choose the perk. Big advantage in duels. This is going to be your perk of choice when you're playing versus more static heroes, because you're going to be repositioning around a lot, and giving an advantage in that duel is incredibly important. However, it's not as strong as it used to be because it's not perma wall hacks. And crucially, momentum boost has its uses as well. The key thing with quick dash distance increase is the fact that you can move around and avoid dives with Freja, no problem, but it's just not near as good as a lot of our other mobility equivalents. I mean, let's be honest, guys, it's a Hanzo launch, right? And that's not exactly the most powerful thing in the history of the universe. However, if you're playing versus hard dive, having more distance and even more verticality with your quick dash, which yes, it applies to that as well, is kind of a big deal. So I would say most of the time, you're going to probably pick Hunter's Instinct. However, if you are under a lot of pressure, momentum boost is going to actually allow your dash to be an actual defensive cooldown to reposition and to avoid those dives, to disengage. So I would say most of the time, Hunter's Instinct, if you're under a lot of pressure, you're under a lot of dive, momentum boost may help you out a lot. Major, I think a little bit simpler. Aerial recovery most of the time. Getting more uptime with Relentless Barrage is cool if you're just punishing a really fat and juicy tank, sure. But it's not always about uptime necessarily, because remember, direct hits with take aim refund your primary fire. But with Freja, the primary fire is not the primary source of her damage, at least in terms of lethality. You're going to do a lot of damage to your primary fire, but you're not actually always going to secure kills. So just more uptime with your primary fire, your projectile non-bolt weapon, is just not all that interesting. What is interesting is aerial recovery, which just allows you to do your basically updraft, scope, cycle more by significantly increasing your ability to sustain the risk that you take by going for that. Freja's gameplay loop has always been using her verticality for bolt cycles, and in between applying pressure on main. Now you heal for 30 health per second until Freja touches the ground. Now, crucially, that can be once updraft has already expired. So what this means is I can actually min-max this. I can go, I wish I could, was it gonna make it the heal sound? Yeah, so I'm healing. I'm still 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 getting healed. I'm still healed. I'm still healed. And now I've reset it again. So basically you have, if you want to min-max it, you could in theory have almost infinite healing output if you're It's not realistically going to ever happen because it's not good to do that. But it really helps you to sustain in 1v1s a lot more. And with Freja, a lot of which perks that you're choosing are going to be what's going to help me win the 1v1 or not die in the 1v1. And really, that's the minor perks, it's tricky with that. But with the major perks, I just find that to be a lot simpler. So, yeah, and it's also ult charge because it's also self-heal as well. Remember, self-heal in Overwatch is ult charge. So 30 more healing per second, 30 healing per second. If you're healing yourself for 60, 70 healing, that goes right to your ult charge. So, okay. Genji. No, this one is a 3. This one is controversial, and if it makes you feel any better, nobody agrees with this one. The bronze Genji mains, the professional Genji mains, the Genji one tricks on the ladder, nobody freaking agrees with this one. I'm going to give my take on this one, but more importantly, give you the nuance about if you're going to use this perk, this is what you need to be doing. Swift Cuts reduces the cooldown of Swift Strike by 3 seconds. This one is both chronically overrated and both underrated. Everybody was clip reacting, oh my gosh, soy jacking, this is insane, greatest thing ever of all time. But the reality is that to opportunity cost to get in somebody's face and not do shuriken damage, well, I mean, that's a choice, right? Like, you're actively making a choice not to weave out as much damage, because to spam melees, or even just to use your shuriken melee, is to slow your fire rate. However, if you are finding compositions, and especially tanks, that you're in their face a lot, this could be good in 6v6. This could be good in situations when you're trading with Winstons, if you're trading with Reinhardt's jumping over his head, if you dive backline and oh no, I overextended. Even just a 3-second cooldown, even if you just melee once, that's going to allow you to reposition and disengage a lot more. This is a perk that's going to save your life and allow you to play more aggressively, consistently, if you know how to use it. The problem with Genji's minor perks is that there is a very clear opportunity cost, more so than with most characters, because Dragon's Blade gaining 30%, Dragon Blade gaining 30% lifesteal is a big quality of life buff to that ult, because it is incredibly important to be able to consistently sustain yourself during the everybody look at me ult, right? So here's what I'd say. If you are playing patty cake with enemy tank a lot on offense, if you're playing patty cake with characters that you're getting up close and in their face a lot, Swift Cuts probably just going to be more consistent of value. However, if that's not the case, if you're not really closing the distance, if you're getting poked out, or you're playing versus characters like Tracer where you can't land the melee anyway, getting a lifesteal is just going to be good. I want to emphasize, like, look at their DPS and look at their tank and ask how many times am I getting in that person's face, and then make your decision accordingly. This is not going to be Swift Cuts. It's not going to be the thing that allows you to just dive into backline and get out for free every single time. That's not how it works whatsoever. However, it is something that's going to allow you to reposition and go for more aggressive things more consistently if you know how to use it. You have to know how to use it. Major perk. Again, I think this one is a little bit controversial. I think this one's probably less controversial than the minor perks. I think meditation, 35 healing per second while deflect is active. Now, you're not always going to use the full deflect, but again, this is self, ult charge, self, heal, and it's consistent. If you are not in need of healing and you're not really isolated, you always have help, it's not as valuable. However, the problem is that blade twisting is better than it used to be because it's not elimination focused anymore, but it's still not incredible. So you're dealing an extra 25 damage over time if the enemy is below half health. That's good. That's especially good if you're nanoed. However, it's not always going to significantly increase the number of eliminations that you're going to get. So let's put it this way. If you're consistently not in need of healing, blade twisting good. It's free value. You're going to be dashing through targets below half health enough to where you're going to be getting value out of it. However, if you're playing a little more isolated, not a lot of healing help, very flank heavy, having 35 health per second, it's a big deal. And remember, like I said, it's also ult charge. So your mods may vary. There's situations where both are good. I don't think there's a bad Genji perk right now. So don't feel as if you have to choose the correct one. Oh yeah, I guess it's worth pointing out that the Genji deflect cooldown on nerf, deflect did get nerfed a little bit recently, so it does make meditation slightly worse, but I don't think it's significant enough to like massively change your perk choices. Hanzo! All right, let's get cooking. This one's one. This one's very simple. Sonic Disruption, Dragon Fury. Don't choose anything else. Swift Lunge on paper allows you to move around a little bit. I don't think it's a trash perk. I mean, if you're getting under a lot of pressure, it's fine. But Sonic Disruption is just really freaking good. Like, you can use your Sonic, hack health back for your team, for your tank, if you know how to play it, and it's amazing. And it lasts for 30 seconds. So you don't even have to keep your Sonic there, because you have a 12-second cooldown with a 30-second hack. So you can Sonic one thing, Sonic another thing, and then Sonic another thing for 5 or 6 seconds, right? So it's good, it's consistent if you know how to play it. I think this perk is a little bit underrated because it requires you to think about Sonic slightly differently, and a lot of Hanzo players aren't doing that, but at the pro level, nobody's choosing Swift Lunge. They're all choosing Sonic Disruption, and they're all using Sonic Disruption. Again, Swift Lunge is okay if you need to move around, but I just think Sonic Disruption, if you know what you're doing, is good. Major is even simpler because I just don't think Scatter Arrows 1 is good enough from my testing yet. And I know Pro Hanzo is choosing this one that I could find either. Dragon Fury is really good because now instead of getting attack speed boost for 1 second like it was, now it's 2 seconds. And the reason why this is especially good is because it does apply to Storm Arrow. So you can see the attack speed here. That's nice. I get Storm Arrow with Dragon Fury. It's just noticeably faster. And crucially, not only that, but if you do hit a shot, okay, banger, you charge your next shot even faster. And you charge, and it keeps snowballing, So if you keep hitting shots, you're just gonna be shooting faster, and maintaining that 25% attack speed. So it makes Storm Arrow faster, it makes your normal gameplay loop faster. It might tweak with your muscle memory a little bit, but it's not even something that you always have to be trying to use to just get free value. So you have to hit them with a regular primary first, do you think? Okay, maybe you're right, yeah. I think you're right, yep, you're correct. After hitting an enemy with primary fire, thank you for that correction. So that actually makes it clear, sir. So yeah, so if you're like, wait, that didn't actually check out. Well, here you go. It's kind of silly. You use that perk. Use that perk. Okay, Junkrat. This one is a 1. There's basically no debate here whatsoever. Mine recycling is cool, but the way that a lot of breakpoints work with Junkrat, you're not often going to be getting finishing blows on most characters with concussive mine. And that's because it's not a one-shot. It's almost a one-shot on 250 HP characters. So if your verse is a bunch of 225 characters, you can get a one-tap, in which case getting a reset's really nice, but it's really dependent on that to work, because a lot of times you're just going to be spamming shots and maybe getting people low, but you notice that I need to hit 2 projectiles to land that one. So I would say it's okay. It's not bad. I guess I'll say to 1.5. Like if you're getting consistent big cleaves, big clumps of enemies, which probably happens more in low ranks to be fair, then yeah, I mean, getting resets on mines is insane. Like you can just keep getting mine and mine and mine and mine and mine. The problem is that, especially in higher ranks, Nitro Boost is just way too important because it allows you to get consistent value out of Riptire. Obviously, you get reduced damage, but if most of the time, just being able to consistently get value out of Riptire is just incredibly important. So if you're playing in lower ranks and your Riptires aren't getting broken and you're getting a lot of mine resets, then yeah, just freaking choose mine recycling. It's a no-brainer. Otherwise, Nitro Boost most of the time going to be the play. Now, this one I think is going to be... Again, we'll say situational, but only situational in the extreme. Bon Voyage. After launching yourself with Concussive Mine, Junkrat gains an attack speed. Now, I'm not really demonstrating that right now, but that's what happens. The problem with gaining attack speed while you're flying through the air is you don't need to be spamming more. You need precision when you're flying through the air. But the problem is the precision comes from the other major perk. So it doesn't really work. It's an anti-synergistic perk that requires you to launch yourself out of a fight. If anything, attack speed would be more useful when you're not moving through the air, when you're spamming it through a choke, or you're fighting somebody up close. So it's not that it doesn't do anything. Of course it does something. It just is not consistent in doing what it does. Whereas Frag Cannon, if you ever have characters that are further away, Pharahs, Widows, anything, even just squishies, just normal static squishies. Yes, you have 1 fewer ammo, but it is way easier to hit shots from a distance. Way easier to hit shots from a distance. So I would say, again, if you're just clumper watching, everybody's in a small choke, there's no off angles, there's no flying characters, there's nobody from a distance, just everyone's just wallowing in the mud pit, then yes, technically Bon Voyage would occasionally provide value accidentally. Other than that, Frag Cannon's just going to be a lot more accurate, and it's going to be a much more consistent output, especially versus characters that are trying to beat you. Okay, Mei. So I'm going to say Mei's like a 1.5. So first off, we got Skating Rink, 25% increased movement speed and heal for 50 health per second during your ult. Cool idea. I like it a lot. I don't know if it's strong enough versus some of the other minor perks that are there, especially the one that it replaced. It will change how you use your ultimate. You do get a noticeable movement speed increase. And obviously 50 healing for everybody inside of it is amazing. It's not just you, it's your entire team. So you don't have to freeze people to get value. And notice it doesn't not freeze people, it does freeze people. So that's nice. It's not amazing, it's useful. It will be good to get you out of bad spots if you are under a lot of pressure. I think it's pretty good. Otherwise, Glacial Propulsion is going to be probably better on maps where you need to rotate. The Mei subreddit was upset with their miners. Yeah, I mean, it makes sense because like I think the problem with Mei's miners is they follow like what we expected perks to be, which was like transformative, interesting, nuanced, kiss curse, not exactly kiss curse, but like miners, and everyone else just gets like explosions and free one shots and stuff like that. So to be fair, Mei's original miners were really toxic, and I still don't like some of her other perks, but yeah. Other one is Glacial Propulsion, which I'll demonstrate that really quick, which is double jumping creates a small ice pillar that launches Mei into the air. Now the obvious is like, oh, this is for mobility, you can get to high ground, so you can double jump, woo, and it will get you a little bit higher than just walling yourself. Notice that it does consume a little bit of your wall cooldown. So wall normally, 12-second cooldown, right? But if I use my double jump, I believe it's a 7-second cooldown, so it's a reduced cooldown if you use the double jump. But yeah, there's definitely opportunity cost here, right? Now, the key thing here is not a lot of people play Mei right now, so I think there's probably some worlds where this could actually be kind of useful in duels. Like, I could see myself doing, like, this kind of nonsense here, you know? And then surprise shot. Like, there's all sorts of little things you could probably do. I think it's probably too long of a cooldown to use it as such, but there's a world where it could be used. I would say if the map has verticality that you can reach with glacial propulsion, probably choose that. More flat, just choose skating rink. In terms of the majors, though, that's where it gets a little bit more tough. If it's a tank you can bully, Deep Freeze is good, but if a tank that has a shield or is really dangerous for you to get close to, I would probably prefer Cryostorm. It's slow and 70 damage on anybody that's around you is really, really, really good. It's not OP necessarily, but it's just free ult charge. It's free survivability. Crucially also as well, the freeze from your initial primary fire is a little bit shorter than it used to be. Okay, yeah, it actually takes a while to get there too. So if you can beam somebody that long, yeah, I mean, you can shoot them a little bit if you can get to that point. But that's not really how you play Mei most of the time. It takes too long to do that, and it's way too risky to do that. It's just annoying for the tanks that get abused by it, which is why I don't like it as a perk. It's not good, it's just annoying. Whereas Cryostorm is just going to be a lot more consistent in winning 1v1s. Rewards punishes people for getting too close to you. It rewards people for being close to you. You get ult charge off of it. You get people in a small room, you can do some crazy things with this perk. So I would say most of the time you're probably going to choose Cryostorm. If there's something that you can bully, that is a tank especially, Deep Freeze does have its uses. Verticality, glacial propulsion, skating rink, otherwise probably the choice. Pharah. Okay, so Pharah, I'm gonna give this another 1.5, where I think people haven't really explored enough with Sky Spy, and we'll talk about that one a little bit. Pharah can move while barrage is active. Good. Helix Shield, convert to 125 health to shield. So remember, this is regenerating your HP faster than normal health, so the health passive kicks in way faster, and then also stacks the health passives. You just basically don't need healing on flanks near as much. Direct hits with a rocket launcher trigger the passive shield regeneration immediately. So you don't have to wait like the what is it first shield. It's like a 1.5 second or something like that. But if you get a direct hit, you just start regenerating shields immediately. So it significantly increases her sustain on off angles whenever she's able to just not take damage for a brief moment. I think this one's pretty obvious. If you're off-angling a lot, Helix Shields is the way to play. If you're not off-angling a lot, then Drift Thrusters is good because it makes barrage a lot more consistent. But I think everyone was choosing Drift Thrusters for a long time because the Helix Shields one was really bad. But I think Helix Shields has received a lot of significant buffs. The Shields is a lot more than it used to be. I think it used to be 75, now it's 125. And then obviously getting your regeneration immediately off of a direct is also a significant buff. I would say you're going to find Helix Shields to be valuable on most situations when you're off-angling with Pharah, which most of the time you probably should be. Now, majors is where things get a little bit more spicy. Jet Dash grants 50% fuel, so that's going to be my dash with my, yeah, so that's that dash here. That's going to give me more fuel, so that means more verticality. But also remember, fuel also means you move further forward faster. You move faster when you're using fuel, so don't just use your fuel for up. You move your fuel for forward or sideways or backwards, anywhere. Fuel's faster, so getting more fuel equals good. In addition to that, you get more overhealth. So when you use your jump jet, you get more overhealth. I'll kind of demonstrate that really fast. So when you use your jump jet, I get fuel overhealth. But look, I get way more overhealth, and then I can even get more overhealth when I use my dash. So it just allows you to have more fuel when you're using your abilities and managing your verticality properly. It's good. Like, I mean, it's good, especially with a lot of maps with verticality when you're moving around a lot. Now, I would say fuel stores plus Helix Shields, if you're moving around a lot of off-angling is going to feel really good. More movement, more speed, more mobility, more dueling capability. However, if you're not off-angling as much, or you're off-angling but you're kind of standing and holding a space, you know, you're holding a corner, holding a choke, map like Circuit Royale, even a map like, what's the one I'm thinking of, Ilios Ruins, right, where there's just not a lot of push-pull, kind of everyone fighting in the same kind of compressed space. I think Sky Spy is underrated. Because, and from what little Pharah that I saw at the pro level, I think the pros can agree at times as well, where your Concussive Blast, so that's that right there, is going to reveal targets to you for 3 seconds. And that means you're going to be able to see them behind walls. But this isn't the only buff. The other buff, I'll actually demonstrate this one off the swap, is you see them behind walls, and then your next rocket that hits that target that is hit by the way, it's an AoE ability, so all of these targets I can see behind walls, deals an additional 30% damage. Now, why this is important is because of breakpoints. And I'm going to demonstrate that really fast here. So I'm going to kill this target really fast, just so we don't have to worry about that. I'll kill this as well. So normally, it's going to take 1, 2 on 250 targets, okay? 225, you still get the 2-tap. But if I get the conk, and I don't even hit the damage with the conk, right? So no damage, right? So you notice that little yellow outline. That does not mean that your rockets have auto-targeting. But it does mean that that initial rocket for each of them is going to do enhanced damage. And so that I could 2-tap 250 characters. Very, 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 very important. And it doesn't, I don't think it quite one-shots Tracer. Ah, frick. I'm not thinking here. Hang on. So if you look at, let's just say Tracer normally, right? Melee not quite finishing her off. Obviously, this is only going to apply to Tracer, but I'll demonstrate that real fast. So there's Conk. She doesn't get hit. Look at how low she gets. You can just sneeze on her. Let's try that with 225. I wonder if that's actually affects 225 HP breakpoints. Let's try that real fast. So obviously we know we can 2-tap Sombra, but what if I hit her with a Conk directly? I don't think that's gonna... No, it's not. But it doesn't mean I can melee her to death, right? So I would say the biggest breakpoints are the 250 breakpoints for sure, but you're combining that with wall hacks, which means that it's easier to hit the direct too. I think this perk is a little bit underrated because not a lot of people are playing Pharah right now. I think this is going to give Pharah a pretty massive advantage in duels, and it's worth choosing when you're not really moving around as much on the map. Because remember, you're just giving wall hacks to everything and more damage on everything. It is going to require you to hit the direct for sure. But yeah. Okay, we'll keep going here. Reaper. Boy, Reaper got some spice. People are crying about the teleport perk, and instead just made the character broken. Character really strong. Don't ever choose Soul Reaving. This is a really simple... it's really simple. I'll give this 101. Don't choose Soul Reaving. It's an elimination focus kill. It's 50 health. And it's also... You have to, like, walk over the body to get it. It's terrible. Use Shadow Blink. It's one of the strongest perks in the game. Your cast time and cooldown are 25% faster, but the range is reduced by 25%. Crucially... This means, instead of the slower teleport, which is not terrible, you get instant teleport, Giga Teleport, which, yes, to be fair, is reduced. So there's certain maps maybe where you don't want to choose this. But honestly, it's just so fast. And if you've watched professional play, everybody's choosing this perk because even pros have a hard time responding to this. Even pros have a hard time punishing this. Because the gameplay loop of Reaper isn't as simple as TP in, Wraith out. Yeah, that's what we do over and over again. Well, now you don't necessarily need to. You can actually use teleport to get out now. It's fast enough to do that. So, yes, the range is nerfed, right? Like, this is a significant nerf, right? But that's not terrible. So I would say, basically 100% of the time, choose Shadow Blink. Think about TP as a staging tool, as a get out of jail free tool, and because it's a 25-second lower cooldown as well, it now can be used more frequently. It's good. It's good. The major perk is where things get a little bit spicy. Ravenous Wraith is okay. Allows for more sustain if, like, let's say you're pumping damage into a tank. It's pretty good. Like, you get some crazy self-sustain when there's a tank that you can actually life-steal off of. But in those circumstances, when you're not playing versus a tank that you're life-stealing off of, especially in a more broad map, Dire Triggers is just pretty good. It's not broken. It's not insane, but it's going to help you to finish off kills a little bit more consistently. And in most circumstances, you're probably going to run Shadow Blink Dire Triggers, unless there's a tank that you can abuse, in which case Ravenous Wraith is pretty good. Okay, Sojourn. I'll say a 2 here. I know a lot of people are saying, oh, the Disruptor Shot slow is good. I agree. I think it's really good. However, I still think Overcharge is one of those perks where it just pushes the ult into the stratosphere. And anything that allows you, if you're good enough with Sojourn, to one-shot 250 HP targets with your ultimate is good. And the thing is 50 more charge, even if you don't one-shot. So if I build up a rail here, let's say I just build up a rail, this target's almost full, and I body shot, that lot of damage, okay?
Hope shines now.
That more damage. You understand what I'm saying? It's important. It's important. So, like, my point being is that, like, if you are consistently getting value out of your ultimates, Overcharge is just by far the best choice. It's probably the best ult perk in the game. The problem is that it is competing with a relatively decent minor perk right now, because the slow from Disruptor Shot, if you are under a lot of pressure, is pretty good and can even be useful on chokes. So, okay, let's keep going here. Major is where things are a little bit more clear, though, where it's just going to be very situational. Friction generators are if you're not being dove a lot and you need your verticality for your shift, then getting 50 charge on your weapon every time you slide is just amazing. It's just free value. Just pick it every time. However, if you're being dove a lot and you need to rotate a lot, maybe it's Flashpoint, maybe it's Tracers and Sombras and Balls and Winstons, you're 225 HP, you're not 250 anymore, right? So you may want to get that additional charge. Now keep in mind, like I said, you do lose some of that verticality, but it's gonna be a comp map situational choice. And then if you don't, if those boxes aren't checked, if you're not being a lot of pressured, like you're not dying off a cooldown, then Friction Generator is gonna be better. Soldier is going to be similar to Sojourn, where situational majors, we'll put it that way. But yeah, the minor, it's going to be basically, I highly recommend the Helix Rocket for ult, just because it does dramatically increase the lethality of your ultimate on tanks. It makes it more consistent on targets that duck behind walls. It's just really good. Now you're like, is it really that good? Just like tactical, are you sure? It's because the other minor just isn't that crazy. I would like this minor a lot more if it over armored you. Or over ammoed you, rather. So Helix Rocket reloads 15 ammo if they damage an enemy. The problem is that will not go higher than 30 ammo. So unlike the Doomfist perk earlier, it's not going to give you more ammo than you already have. And in addition with Soldier, in a lot of your duels, not all of your duels, you should be opening with Helix on an unaware target and then using the boop of the Helix to finish off a target, right? You don't hit a Helix, try to hit a Helix on a target that already knows that you're there. So what you're going to see is that, you know, using this gameplay loop doesn't really reward you with more ammo. So it's not bad. It's just not as valuable as a lot of the other minor perks in the game. And by that metric, I think really you can't really go wrong with either one, but your mileage will probably be a little bit more consistent with Tactical Salvo. It's going to make your ult a little bit better and more flexible with what you do. Because it does help with the weakness of the ultimate, which is it's better versus tanks, which Visor is not great versus tanks. It's better when to get you value when they dive you, because you can defend yourself with Helix easier. And it's also better when they duck behind a corner. So it's not amazing. It's not Sojourn's ult, but it's going to be better. And I think most soldiers that I have seen have consistently chosen Tactical Salvo, professional soldiers. Major. This one's fun. They finally, I think, got Stimpak in a good spot. I know a lot of people are kind of negative about Stimpak, but I disagree with those people. I think Stimpak is perfect for what it's supposed to be, which is in situations when you're not running around anymore, you get a slightly weaker version of the heal, but it's still a heal. You're not harming yourself. You're not anti-nating yourself. You're just doing more damage, and it lasts for 5 seconds. It's great. For whatever reason, if you're a soldier one trick that's crazy enough to play soldier in Circuit Royale, Havana, Junkertown, you're not being dove, you're not rotating a lot, freaking do damage. Do freaking damage on anything. It's good in duels. It's good at shooting tanks, good at shooting shields, good at poking at range. Obviously, if you're repositioning, rotating a lot, wide, broad maps, agility training is still really good because the reload, the movement speed, it's good. But if you're not moving around as much on Soldier, Stimpak is just objectively better. And I think a lot of people are sleeping on this one. So I don't think it's Soldier's a crazy character right now, but I definitely think Stimpak is an actual choice now as opposed to before. Okay, Sombra. Sombra is definitely a fun one. I think for me, I'm still going to say Control Alt Escape is the way to go. It significantly increases her uptime. Basically, when you're 50% or lower half health, you get instant passive health regeneration on your Translocator. So if you take some damage, Translocate, you're already healing back to full. Love it. Now, crucially, it is not ult charge, so it's not quite as good because it is passive health generation, but it's good. Encrypted upload, hack can be used while invisible, means you can kind of increase your like you can kind of go in stealth, use a hack, bait attention, and then do a delayed engage. So the way that you'd use encrypted upload, I'll demonstrate that real fast, is you'd go into stealth, you'd be like, hey, look at me. And they turn on you, oh, they try to spy check you, and then you hit the virus afterwards. You can definitely be really obnoxious with that gameplay loop, but that leans very, very hard into everything on this big one-shot cycle, which I'm a little bit less in love with, not just from a design standpoint, but I just don't think it's as consistently applicable for most Sombra players. It's better to lean more into just higher uptime and higher survivability from Control Alt Escape. It's just way more consistent. Now, the Major is interesting because viral replication is still situationally really good. I've had insane plays of the game with Sombra before where I catch the enemy clumped with an EMP, I end up spreading like 3 or 4 viruses and just end up doing like a ridiculous amount of damage. However, in those situations when the enemy team isn't clumped, Healthy Hacker is really good because hacked health packs provide up to 50 over health for Sombra that does decay, but it doesn't decay right away. Look at my health, 225, 275. 3, 4, 5, and starts to decay. I was off by a second. It lasts a little bit longer than you think. And this basically rewards you for taking duels near your health packs because it just gives you a little bit more beef. So it gives you another reason to hack a health pack, which if you're playing Sombra, you probably shouldn't be hacking all the health packs, but having one and playing around that can be useful. Helps you to hold that off angle. But now you're just a little bit harder to remove. It changes a lot of breakpoints. Like, let me clarify, guys. 50 HP is freaking insane. We've just seen Cassidy and Sojourn's win rates go into the toilet from losing 25 HP. Well, Sombra, you're freaking gaining 50 HP, right? So all of a sudden, you're going to be changing breakpoints and a lot more duels. Now, crucially, it's not permanent. And ironically, one of the funny things about this is when you think about combining it with Controlled Escape, you have passive health regeneration. So why am I going back to the health pack again? The way to look at it instead is more along the lines of I'm either utilizing my beef from a health pack or I'm utilizing my passive health from backline. So I don't have to try to use both because there's no point using your passive health when you're walking over a health pack. But if you are near one, you're going to be strong. If you're not near one, you're still going to be strong because of Controlled Escape. So really what Controlled Escape and Healthy Hacker do is they don't really combine to make an OP gameplay loop. What they do is they say that you can play near health packs or you don't have to play near health packs. What does the situation demand right now? So it's really more along the lines of don't try to make both of these work because it won't matter. Instead, run both most of the time, I would say, unless the enemies are clumped or unless you like the encrypted upload gameplay loop. And just get away with the fact that you're just really, really hard to nail down in duels. If you fight near a health pack, you have an advantage, right? If you're not near your health pack, well, you'll again have an advantage. So, okay. All right, Symmetra. Sadly, I wish that there was more good things to say about hovering barrier. I'm gonna go and jump right to because this is why you guys are here, right? Like if you skip to this part of the video, you want to know what I think about hovering barrier. It's cool. It's just not as useful as having teleport. I had an interesting conversation with Cussa, and he was saying that like a lot of low and mid rank Symmetras really struggle to use teleport, and it checks out. I think Symmetra is one of the most misunderstood characters by both the community at large, but also some of the lower mid rank Symmetra mains. She is really strong and delayed advantageous duels. Obviously, this is not going to be a Symmetra guide. I already have one of those out there. But it's basically, it's about, you can win a lot of duels when you surprise people, or if you have a turret, or if you have that TP heal, right? There's a lot of, or if you hit an alt fire, it gives you a little bit of an advantage right from the get-go, or if you have a level 2 beam, you know? And the problem with using your shield is it's probably decent. I have seen a little bit of use that's decent on a really narrow map where you're not off-angling at all. But that just isn't very common. So a lot of time with Symmetra, you're rotating, you're pressuring, you're off-angling, you're dueling, you're using your turrets, you're distracting, you're harassing, you're giving your team information. You are really a utility DPS character, and while I think there's a lot more to do with the character, she's still pretty darn good at that. And sadly, Hovering Barrier just isn't good enough at that because you're needing to move more with Teleporter than you are standing still and replacing your Teleporter with a shield. I just don't think it's good enough in most situations. Your mileage may vary if you're off-angling or if you're frontlining and punishing an enemy tank with a massive beam from perfect alignment, and you're playing on like Circuit Royale, and it's a tank that you can bully and won't run over you, like let's say a Junkrat Queen and you have like, let's say a Ryan, I could see Hovering Barrier being okay. But that's only when the map does not give me a relevant off angle that I can use Shield Battery with, that's going to give me healing, that's going to allow me to reposition around the map. Now, I know you guys are going to say, well, you don't have to use the shield. It's situational. The problem is that I'm going to choose to teleport in most situations 9 times out of 10. And if I choose the teleporter 9 times out of 10, 9 times out of 10, I'm going to want Shield Battery. You get what I'm saying? It's always opportunity cost because it makes your flank plays so much better. Now, so that I'm going to give Symmetra like a 1.5. You know, I think there's a little bit of your mileage may vary, but I think it's pretty clear. Now, with the minor perks, I think it's a little bit simpler. Sentry capacity is really good. Okay, no, it's not. It's decent. You get an additional charge of the sentry turret. The problem is that you still have a 10-second cooldown with your turrets. So sentry turret, sentry capacity is really good at the very start of the fight, and then it immediately falls off really hard in value. Whereas perfect alignment is pretty consistent value for most of the fight, most of the situations. Getting a little bit more range, 20% more range is noticeable. I'm going to kind of destroy my turrets over here so that they stop doing this. And you'll see it right here, right? So if I do that and I change that to perfect alignment, that's going to hit. I'll demonstrate that even further. I mean, it's noticeable. And it's now starting at level 1. You don't have to wait for it to tier up to increase in range. So I'm going to say I'm going to choose most situations when I don't have time to set up, so about 95% of the time, I'm going to choose perfect alignment. And then I'm going to choose shield battery, because both of those are going to complement me moving around and rotating, setting up traps, and harassing and winning duels. If you have all the time in the world to set up, if you are fighting in a small choke, there is a world where you could choose center capacity and get value and choose hovering barrier. The problem is that to get full value out of center capacity means that you're going to need like 30, 40 seconds to get all 4 of your turrets back. Remember, I know I'm going to get comments about like, oh, but you could do this with it. And I'm like, I know there's a million things that you could do. Like you said, you could, yeah, exactly. You could do turret bombs more deadly, but it's always opportunity cost. You're losing primary fire range, 20%. That's almost always useful. You're losing shield battery. That's always useful, right? So it's always opportunity cost. It's not that you can't do anything with the other perks. It's what you're giving up to do those things. Okay, Torb, this one, it's interesting. I'm gonna give this one like a 1.52 in terms of like uncertainty. They just recently buffed Overload, so activating Overload fully rivets guns ammo. Is like fine, I guess, but honestly, the longer the overload lasts, the less likely that you desperately need to reload. And honestly, I think hammer time's kind of underrated. The ability to rotate around faster isn't just funny to hit hammers, but it's better to reposition, off angle, flank, everything. It just is more consistent. So I would say that actually, unironically, I'm going to recommend on any map, especially that is broad and wide open and you don't have time to set up on, I think you're going to choose hammer time. It's good. Pushes, disengages. You don't have to leave your hammer. It just allows you to rotate so you can go back and use your gun. Really good. Otherwise, I guess if you have a lot of time to set up and it's more of a narrow map, then yeah, I mean, fully loaded is probably fine. And following off of that, that's also going to dictate your major perks as well. Anger bolts, unless you got time to set up and lean into that overloaded turret, freaking use anger bolts, man. 50% distance, attaching to wall and ceilings. I mean, it's not just a funny perk. It's good. It's unironically good because one of Torb's big problems, especially, is if you don't have time to set up on attack or mid-fight, you just don't really get turret value because you just throw it at your feet and it explodes. You could throw it mid-fight anywhere. And it's one of the big reasons why we even had a very brief Torbjorn meta, because back in right after perks, not hard meta, but better. It's good. It's good. You can use it and you can use it to control angles and you can put it in inconvenient spots for other characters where it's really hard for them to break it. It's really good. It's really good. So I would say most time, hammer time, anchor bolts. Most maps, most situations. If you're very static, not moving around a lot, very defensive oriented, I can see fully loaded, overloaded turret doing okay. Tracer, blink packs, flashback, no questions. No, real quick. We'll talk briefly about kinetic reload. Conceptually, really cool perk idea. Problem is that it's inconsistent because using melees as Tracer is more of a mid to high level tech. It's really good. And it's more importantly, like the Genji perk, it depends on what you're dueling. You're not always going to melee. And crucially, the melee does not give you over ammo, right? So it takes trigger discipline. So like clip, blink, clip, right? That situation, weaving in melees here is going to help out a lot with your damage uptime. Winston's balls, tracers, anything that you're, tracer mirror, right? Like you're going to use it. Like, but the problem with the health pack perk is it's just so incredibly consistent. It's good for rollouts. It's good for sustain. It's good for disengaging. It's good for pushing. I like kinetic reload. It's just not quite good enough. And don't even get me started on quantum entanglement. It's just worse. When you know how to use Tracer, which is using blinks are everything with Tracer. It is more important to have survivability through blinks than it is through overhealth. It's just better. It's just objectively better in all circumstances. Never is quantum entanglement better. If recall restored 1 blink charge, we'd have a conversation. But as long as it restores 2, we're not having a conversation. Venture. I'll say a 2 because the major perks are really easy. We'll get to that in a second. Drill dash distance is 50% longer while burrowed. If you're trying to close the gaps, trying to close the distance, and also just be able to get out for free. So let me kind of demonstrate what that looks like. So you drill dash, you burrow, bop, 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 drill dash again. You can cover a pretty decent amount of distance. I don't think that's a huge weakness of Venture. So really what the perks does is it just kind of puts that in crack, right? And we all know Venture does crack. So basically, you're just going to be going a lot further with the drill dash underground. And if you notice, it doesn't, because the animation's longer, it doesn't punish you with your next drill dash cooldown. It is balanced. Like as soon as you use it, even though drill dash lasts longer, the cooldown already starts. But yeah, you just go a little bit further. Yeah, it's good. So on wide open maps, like let's say sniper maps, and you're trying to close crazy flanks, crazy distances, I can see this one being useful. The problem is in those if those circumstances aren't there, then I think Excavation Exhilaration is up there with like the Sojourn ult for transformation of the ultimate. Again, I don't like ultimate perks, but Excavation Exhilaration really significantly like doubles the value of Venture's ult. Because 300% cooldowns, I mean, come on guys. Like you just have cooldowns extravaganza. And I think any situation where you don't have like major distance to cover, like the map's a little bit more friendly, maybe the enemy composition is a little bit more friendly, you're going to choose Excavation Acceleration for sure. For sure. But Deep Burrow, I can definitely see it. Havana, you know, yeah, I could see it. You know, I could see it definitely. Could help close those distances safely, for sure. Major perk. It's not even a competition. So Covered in Dirt, a lot of people are complaining about it. It was bugged. It was a terrible perk. People were like, no, it's good, it's good. I'm like, no, wait, it's terrible, it's terrible, terrible. And then I was like, oh my gosh, it is good. And I was like, wait, it's bugged. It's not supposed to do this. Because I was reading what it's supposed to do, and it was bugged for months. And so people were using it because it would give you like 100 shields on a melee. And you're like, that's not what it says. It would refresh all of your shields that you'd previously it wasn't supposed to do that. So they nerfed the bug, and now the perk is indeed trash. So I was right all along. Ha ha ha. But the other bad news is that they've replaced it with a perk that it will be inconsistent with value, but it's still really good. So this is the one that I was joking about. If this doesn't get nerfed, I'm going to run around screaming naked. So, you know, we're not so sure on that one. We're not going to hold me to that one. So if it doesn't get nerfed, I'm not going to run around screaming naked. Well, okay, maybe not in my neighborhood. I don't know. Basically, what this means is that you're just going to get crazy range. So for demonstration, there's your splash damage. And then you pop your E. And you're like, oh, the damage is really low. It's because I'm too far. But it basically allows your primary fire to essentially reach to 30 meters. Now, the big downside with this one is the fact that there is a bit of a travel time. Like the projectile speed is still a projectile, right? So, but that being said, if there's a static target and you can't reach them, it's freaking good. The other thing to highlight here is that it gives you as many shields as Covered in Dirt. So using your melee versus just popping your E and then canceling it even if you want to, you're getting more shields. So yeah, if you want like shield generation, you have another ability to generate shield, and you have optional range. You should always use Smart Extender. Always use Smart Extender. Clobber just isn't good enough in melee as it used to be when it was bugged. Even though Venture is a relatively melee-focused character, you just don't want to be directly in people's faces for extended periods of time. And so I would say most of the time you can choose Excavation Acceleration with Smart Extender. Sometimes in more broad maps, you'll choose Deep Burrow. But yeah, you're almost never going to choose Covered in Dirt. Okay, Widowmaker. This one's really simple as well. Sniper's Instinct. Sniper scope shots charge 100% faster for 2 seconds after using Grappling Hook. Choose this one, especially considering they just reduced the amount of cooldown for the grapple shot from 12 to 10. So you're going to use grapple a lot. Now, crucially, you don't have to grapple shot. You can just grapple on the floor, and I charge my shot faster. So if you're doing it immediately afterwards, if you look here, right? I think that's correct. I mean, that's the way it reads, right? Am I crazy? Yeah, it does. It does. So you charge faster whether you're grapple shotting. That's going to be the best use for it, but you're just going to be grappling and shooting a lot, so just use it. It's consistent value. And then the other one's even easier, which is just use Escape Plan. Seeker Mine is just butt cheeks. It is terrible. So first off, they buffed Venomine to 125 damage now, so it actually does decent damage. Check this out.
Smoky notes of poison. How venomous.
Okay, insane. Now I'm gonna. Oh, I don't have the freaking perk. I don't have the freaking perk. I was like, why am I not charging? I'm gaslighting myself, right? I'm oh my gosh. Okay, so, let me restart here, okay? Normal scope speed. Yeah, it's way faster. Way faster. You don't have to grapple on this guy. Okay. This one, so we've already seen what Venomine does. Now, this is what Venomine does with this. More range, AoE, but 25 damage. It's terrible. It's terrible. The concept is interesting. It's cheeks. It's an actual nerf to Venomine, especially nowadays. Do not use this. Always use Escape Plan. Scope shots reduce grappling. So any scope shot is going to reduce grappling hook's cooldown by up to 4 seconds. Now, crucially, it doesn't work on shields, body shots, headshots, fully charge, whatever. I think there's maybe a certain. I don't think you can spam it. I'm actually not sure. But yeah, basically always use Escape Plan. Always use Sniper's Instinct. Okay, Ana. Support time. Honestly, interesting one. I would give her a 2. You know, I think there's probably a pretty consistent, clear choice. And from what I have seen from pro players and high-level players, and even just my own theory crafting, I think it's pretty consistent, like what you're going to be choosing in what situations. I'm gonna go and get the elephant in the room out of the way for me anyway, and say that Headhunter is just like really not gonna be chosen most of the time. It's a muscle memory thing, it's a consistency thing, and then you also compare it to Biotic Balance, which is now even better. So it's 60 damage, and I mean it's the strongest it's ever been. It is a major perk now. You're gonna be choosing Biotic Balance most of the time, especially if you're under a lot of pressure. Now, I can see a world where Headhunter is useful if you're not like ever being pressured whatsoever, but you also have to keep in mind that the Biotic Balance also applies the splash damage and the splash purple as well, so it's not bad at range by any means. So your mileage may vary. If you're good with Headhunter, if you like Headhunter, go for it. It's fine if you can hit the shots. Yeah, you can absolutely duel people, but if you're under any sort of serious pressure, Biotic Balance is going to be really, really good and probably the more consistent perk. How? Miners is where the sauce gets the cheeks, because I think there's a pretty clear situation in which you choose both. Speed Serum is basically choose this perk most of the time, but Groggy, good if tank, good to sleep. You get what I'm saying? Wrecking Ball, Mauga, Roadhog now, I guess. Winston, if you're dunking on the guy. I mean, honestly, Winston maybe not as much. And it's less for the damage, because you could be like, oh, if I hit a sleep dart, it helps me to win a duel. Yeah, but the key thing is that it's the slow. That's the big thing. Whether you think that's healthy design or not is another question. But it's really, really good. Ramatra's another one for just really diminishing hazard as well. For really hurting the character after the sleep, the ability to move around, to disengage, to keep pushing. So Groggy is like pretty freaking good if you can hit the sleep with the tank, and there's a lot of tanks, so that's going to be useful. If you don't have that tank, Speed Serum is really good because it's the movement speed on a Nano, which is just, it's amazing. It significantly increases the consistency of Nano's value. Yes, you lost your Nano value, but now this is a minor perk. And movement speed's crazy. Like, movement speed is crazy. It is so, so good. And it can even be used defensively. So if you nano somebody, move, slow grandma. Wait, no. You are fast. Zooming. Right? So I think obviously it's not the most broken perk in the history of the universe, but it is one of those old perks that I think is good enough to actually justify a consistent choice if there's nothing to consistently abuse with Groggy. Because remember, it's useful for you, but 40% movement speed for the target that's nanoed, you're gonna have so much fun with that one. Bap! Yeah, there's some nuance here. I'll say 2 in terms of which ones you choose. Biotic Reloader basically means hitting an entire 3-round burst reloads a healing projectile. So, hitting all those bullets means that I reload one of my healing projectiles, one of the 10 in the bottom right, and vice versa. Hitting a healing projectile directly reloads 3 of my ammo. This is cool as a concept and will help your uptime if you're weaving a lot. Again, if it's a corridor fight and a lot of healing and damage, and you're going to get some value out of it. However, what I heard from a lot of the other high-level BAT players is that it's more of a conceptually good perk that doesn't really significantly increase your uptime that much. So, it's cool, but BAP's reload is really not that bad, and so it's not really that much more beneficial for uptime. It's nice, but it's not great. Alternatively, automated healing is also nice, but not great, but it crucially helps deal with a small weakness of BAP, which is ranged support. So you're going to be able to do 75 healing on range. And crucially, it applies on this, it applies on this, and applies on this. So you're going to get 75 healing every time you use an ability. Now, I can already hear the argument, yeah, but you don't have your abilities that often. That is true. That is absolutely true. But you're probably going to find a little bit more value from this, especially because it's range healing. You can reach a long distance than you would with Biotic Reloader. So Biotic Reloader is probably fine in small corridors where you're weaving a lot. By weaving, I mean a lot of, this kind of a nonsense. Healing your tank, shooting the enemy shield, whatever. Otherwise, automated healing is probably going to be your go-to. Yeah, it has pretty decent range. Yeah. Major. Rocket Boots, probably going to be the default. Just because you can move around any map, any situation where you're being dove, any map with a lot of verticality or side verticality, where you can use the verticality and dash off. It's going to be freaking good. But I think Assault Burst is a little bit underrated if you're not under any pressure much at all. So again, in those narrow corridor situations that we talked about earlier, yes, you don't have the double healing for allies that are below half health, but if you're really only healing yourself with Assault Burst anyway, and you're not under a lot of pressure, getting 30% increased attack speed is a lot, because remember, that doesn't just apply to your weapon, it applies to your healing as well, which, it's your weapon. So if I use Shift here, It's freaking fast, right? Now, I'm gonna be honest. I don't think it's the default perk to choose. I would still choose Rocket Boost most of the time because most of the time you're gonna be under enough pressure to where you're gonna want that half healing. Below half double healing with shift, right? However, if there is a circumstance where you're not under that pressure and your teammates are too far away, you don't want to be standing behind your tank, right? Then getting the increased attack speed for both your healing and your damage is definitely worth looking into. I would say it's like one of those perks that you're going to only use rarely, but in those rare circumstances, it makes sense, right? It makes sense. Okay, Brigitte. A lot of controversy with this one. A lot of mixed messages. I'll give this one a 3. Okay, so let's talk about this one. So big one is going to be morale boost. Wait, you tested combat medic. They changed it so that it no longer gets triggered by my whip shot or shield bash, just flail. Really? Well, hang on. This is important. You're right. It's only swings. Let's try this one more time. You're right. Okay, so Lindholm Lab coming in clutch here because they just shadow nerfed Combat Medic and didn't say anything. So, Combat Medic melee attacks, which are swings with your weapon, not whip shots, not bashes, are going to reduce the cooldown of your repair package by 0.5 seconds. There was a lot of controversy with this one because this definitely increases the uptime of your armor packs, which is really freaking good. And if you're getting whip shots, bashes, whips, whatever, you're going to consistently have more armor packs. It's just good. However, if you are infrequently engaging with your shield bash or your swings, and it's more along the lines of, I'm getting dove, I hit the whip shot, I bash out, you know what I'm saying? And I live, having an extra 3 seconds on your Inspire is pretty good. That's gonna help you mostly keep, it's more about your self-survivability in that time, because it's gonna allow you to be able to generate healing for longer. Now, we just found out, as of today, that they just shadow nerfed this to where the Combat Medic does not apply to Shield Bash and Whip Shot, as I said, but that used to apply before. So Combat Medic is gonna be a little bit worse than it used to be. That being said, I had a lot of people on both sides of the spectrum here that were convinced that their minor perk was better. I'm gonna be honest, if you are not in a situation where you are whipping and running, basically, I think Combat Medic is probably still more consistent in most situations. You're still going to be getting even just a couple swings here and there is still going to be enough value for me to justify it. I would probably sing a different tune if I felt like Inspire was stronger. I'm just not convinced that Inspire by itself is as strong as it once was. But I would say if you're really not getting any swings on because the enemy tank runs you over, the enemy DPS are just not engaging on you at all, then I would probably say morale boost. If it's heavy poke, DPS, if it's a brawl thing that's running you over, and you're flanking or angling or having to be really creative, then just having more Inspire from your whip shot is going to be useful. Yeah. So I'd say it really depends on the enemy comp in the map, right? Exactly. If I have a lot of uptime, and I'm not getting destroyed, then Combat Medic 100% better. Otherwise, I think morale boost is just going to be more of that burst, and then I can live and I can kind of do things. I can hit the whip and just hold shield and heal myself up for longer, right? Something to keep in mind. Now the major is also contextual, but I think, oh man, it's the same thing, right? Like this is why I think Brig is definitely a 3. So the whip shot knockback damage definitely changes some breakpoints. So Brax is going to go crazy with me in the chat here. But I'm not going to do all the math on this right now. But TLDR, they just buffed Bash. So with Whiplash, I'm assuming that that's probably going to change some breakpoints more so than it used to before. Because it's an extra 50 damage and an extra 20 damage with the Shield Bash now. So that's an extra 70 damage in a lot of your combos. That matters, right? For sure. Yeah, exactly, Lindholm Lab. So there's definitely some value here. It is a really good perk. However, if you are needing to move around the map, if you're playing versus heavy counters, if it's a big, broad map, I just think Inspiring Strike is still better. And the key thing is because of the movement speed. Obviously, the Inspire healing is instant when activated by Shield Bash is great. And by the way, that does not wipe your previous Inspire. So watch this. So I'll swing here. Shield Bash. I don't have the perk selected. I'm going to become a nun. Shoot me, please shoot me. Please shoot me. Okay, so, and you see how it still has the Inspire? And you're like, wait, didn't it just cash out the Inspire? No, because I have the previous melee swing that proc the HOT Inspire, and the Shield Bash Inspire did not overwrite that Inspire. So it's slightly better than you think it is if you're confused about that. So it's really good. It's just a burst heal. And then you can also reset that with Rally and use, you could bash, ult, bash again, so get double burst of Inspire. Obviously the movement speed is just really freaking good for movement, for disengaging, for rotating, for disengaging tanks, for flanking, for angling. Inspiring Strike is just so incredibly consistent. However, fighting in a small room, fighting in a small space, not needing to go around crazy, want to bully some Tracers, some Genjis, Whiplash is good. And the key thing with Whiplash is that it procs more than you think. When I first saw this perk way back in like February, I was like, it's gonna be kind of niche. It's not niche. It's good. I just don't think it's gonna be as good as Inspiring Strike in most situations. So yeah, Brig is like, there are a lot of good perks with Brig. They're all good. None of them are bad. It's just knowing the situation and leveraging it. If you're using combat medic, you want to be getting some swings in. If you're using morale boost, you want to be making sure that you're hitting those freaking whips, right? If you're using Inspiring Strike, you need to be using that movement speed to be able to take more aggressive off angles. Whiplash, obviously, you need to be hitting your whips again. So, yeah. EDRE, this one's going to be so incredibly easy. If you are repositioning a lot with EDRE, destroying your pylon and putting it elsewhere, using rapid construction is good. My last perk guide, I think I slept on this one a little bit because I didn't realize that it also affected your reapplication. So if you destroy it and then reapply it, it just comes back faster. So if you're moving around a lot with EDRE, it's good. The problem is that's not generally how EDRE is played too often. So more often than not, you're probably going to be choosing Summer Solstice, which just means that your ult, you get more flight, more attack speed, more flight speed. It's good. It's another one of those ult perks that's good enough to choose even over the more consistent value one. Rapid construction, if you're standing in the same spot, if your pylons are getting broken, it just isn't worth. It's just basically very, very little value. It is worth that it builds faster, which is nice. So it starts healing a little bit faster. But again, that's just going to be useful if you're moving around a lot. Otherwise, it just doesn't really matter because it's going to be up anyway. Majors is incredibly easy. Sunburn, the other one sucks. I'm not going to elaborate. It doesn't do near enough healing. The cone is way too narrow. The idea is cool. The execution is not. Never ever choose Solar Flare. It's the worst perk in the entire game. Choose Sunburn, always. I don't think Sunburn's OP by any means. It's good, but it just don't choose Solar Flare. Don't choose Solar Flare, ever. Juno, I'll get this one a 2. Locked on, probably the better choice here. Reduce the cooldown pulsar torpedoes by 1 second for each enemy hit. Probably the more consistent one. Obviously, locking on allies 35% faster is nice. It sounds cool. It's okay, but I just want more torpedoes more often. And getting even 2 enemies with torpedoes is 2 seconds more, which means that when I use my torpedoes, well, I actually have to use them here. It goes from 10 to 8. That's a 20% cooldown reduction on a very relevant cooldown every time I use it. It's good. Use it. Probably don't use Familiar Vitals. It's not that it's bad. It's just not as good as the other one. Not in terms of uptime of value. The other one is the major perk. And this one's a little bit more controversial. So obviously everyone's like, whoa, I could just go, whoa, woo, damage and healing uptime. And it's not terrible if there's a tank that you need to heal a lot. It's also not terrible if there's a tank that you want to shoot a lot. I've played this one versus a Roadhog, and it was kind of funny how much damage it's able to do to him. It's not going to kill the Roadhog, but it's okay. The problem is it doesn't increase your DPS by as much as you would think. I don't know the exact number. Maybe someone in chat could tell me. But I remember looking up some numbers in this one. But it doesn't increase your DPS or healing by that much. It's not as much as you think. So it's only a small uptick in the amount of pressure that you do. And the real reason why it's bad, not bad, but it's because you have to use your mobility cooldown to do it. And to be honest with you, most of the time with Juno, you need your mobility cooldown to open up angles for your torpedoes, for damage, to rotate away from threats, and so on. So I think one of the rules here with Overwatch is that you really shouldn't be forced to use a mobility cooldown to get sustain back. Does that sound familiar? Because that's also why the Rein perk is bad. Yeah, anyway, we're not going to talk about design today. But yeah, it's okay. It's better than nothing, but Liftoff is going to be probably more consistent on any map where any sort of verticality or distance matters. Liftoff is not free value either.
I think is psychological.
Yeah, it is a little bit of psychological. But yeah, triple jump is like cool. Cool is like fine, like, but if there's any map where like verticality matters at all, triple jump is good. The other thing with triple jump as well is you can get better angles with torpedoes because you go higher. And it also creates distance between yourself and dive threats. So yeah, I actually think both the Juno's major perks are kind of like, they're not as strong as you think they are perks, but they're decent. So I would choose triple jump most of the time. Anytime I don't really value my verticality, I'll just use glide boost. And when I want to do damage or when I don't need to move, I'll just use it for free. But really, I think even triple jump is not always great because you do have fall off in your gun. So getting higher and further away from your targets also means fall off in your healing. And you probably want to play cover if you're playing versus hit scan. So liftoff is going to be, if you know what you're doing, probably the more consistent perk when, if you use it. It could do some really funny things to like Genji blades and tracers and so on. Winston evens. But if you're not under a lot of pressure, then faster blaster may be something that you occasionally use, basically. I just don't think either major perks are like mind-blowing. Triple jump will be really good in certain situations and just not useful at all in a lot of other situations. And yeah, so I would say if you're under a lot of pressure, almost always choose lockdown, by the way, period. And then if you're under a lot of pressure, lift off. If the map provides a lot of mobility, lift off. If there's literally nothing really to rotate or move around with, then just choose faster blaster and use it when you want to. But yeah, losing crit blaster was such a bummer, man. Such a bummer. So much more fun to play around. Here we go. Super easy. Fortune teller. If you're taking angles, it just significantly increases your chip healing on targets that you can see. We've already kind of demonstrated in our last guide, but like you do damage and you'd be surprised how forgiving those healing Afuda can travel on anything that needs it, right? Obviously urgent care is okay situationally. It does mean that when you're really far away from targets, the healing goes a little bit faster. I don't think it's a bad perk. I think both can function, but Fortune Teller probably like going to be the more consistent when you are actually doing damage, and you should be doing damage with Kiriko. But I don't think either are bad. Now, for the major, I think it's pretty simple. Just Foxtrot. Very rarely should you be swift stepping to a target and then be using your attack speed, even if it is for healing. More often than not, you're starting on an angle and using your teleport to get out, right? Foxtrot is not just about the cooldown recovery. It's also the movement speed, and it's also the fact that it applies to your Suzu and yourself. So you increase your movement speed, you increase your cooldown recovery for 3 seconds, and so if you're doing the math right, that reduces your cooldown by 3 seconds. That's it. So just pick Foxtrot, and then the minor perk, both are okay. I think Fortune Teller, for the way that Kiriko is supposed to be played, is probably going to be more consistent, but I don't think the other one's bad. Okay, Lifeweaver. Boy, he got the nerf hammer. So first things first, we'll start off with the majors. Super Bloom, we know Super Bloom. It's good. Use it most of the time. I'm going to give this one a 2 in terms of controversy because Petal Power does affect your attack speed. Hey, so you can do more damage, but it also increases your attack speed for your teammates, and it also increases your charge rate for your healing, which is nice. So if you're like AFKing in the back and you have like 0 opportunities to do damage and you're under no pressure, then yeah, Petal Power, like you have like a broken hit scan, then like, yeah, Petal Power is okay. But the problem is it's like, there's probably an opportunity for you to defend yourself with Super Bloom. And there's probably an opportunity for you to utilize your damage with Super Bloom. Because Super Bloom does, like, let's be clear, a lot more damage. Like, you do a lot more damage. More than 25% attack speed. And it's also going to be more consistent. So it does, because it doesn't demand you standing on your pedal platform. So I would say pedal platform is going to be something that, like, if the map, if your hero, if the situation demands it, it can be okay. But Super Bloom is just, like, really, really hard to turn down, like, 100% of the time. Because if you're only heal botting with Lifeweaver, you're not even shooting tank or shooting frontline or defending yourself, you're probably not playing him correctly. Now, to give that credit, he is weaker at defending himself than he used to, so you might be a little bit more risk averse post-patch. He lost 25 health, he lost his most powerful minor perk, but I still think Super Bloom is going to be a little bit more consistent. That being said, if you can find a way to leverage pedal power for your healing speed and or for an ally, then you can get value out of it. Now, the minor one, bro, people were going to freaking war in my Discord over this little one. He lost his healing per second, which is a bummer, right? For Lifeweaver mains. Cleansing Grass cleanses negative effects. Cleansing a negative effect reduces Lifeweaver cooldown by 4 seconds. Now, to my knowledge, maybe somebody in chat can correct me, I believe this applies to the DPS passive. So this applies to nades. This applies to dynamites. So Ashe applies to Mauga burn. This applies to Mauga slam. And I believe this also applies to the DPS passive. So anything, Jungle Communal, Anti-Nade, anything along those lines, you're going to cleanse that. Now, that's important because the important thing is not so much the cleanse itself, but it's the reduction in cooldown. But yeah, this perk is a joke. So basically, here's what we're looking at here. It works with Dynamite, it works with Bola Shot, it works with Hack, EMP, and Virus, which is strange. Venomine. So basically, all the DOTs, it looks like it works. But a lot of like the knockdowns, like Accretion, Shatter, doesn't work. So TLDR, the most important one is like, here's what I would say. Okay, so let's go back to the guide portion here. All right. And I'm looking at this and I'm like, what's going to be the thing that's going to be the most consistently cleansed? I could see Nade. I could see May Freeze. I could see Hack. I could see Mauga's Overrun, you know, his burn being somewhat useful, because if you think about it, if you're pulling a target in trouble, you don't pull a target that's... Okay, so this is the way to think about it, okay? This doesn't change how you use grip as Lifeweaver. You don't pull targets that are necessarily have a negative effect on them, unless it's a really serious negative effect. But what you do is the perk gets better if that effect is more common on targets that are struggling. Does that make sense? Like, if I'm playing into a Mauga, I don't automatically choose that perk. But if my tank is getting abused, it's more often than not the Mauga is doing a little bit of burn damage, and that means that I just get a 4-second cooldown refund for free. So if my tank is getting abused by not something cleansable, you know, the Mauga burn isn't really what's killing my tank, but the burn is what's going to allow me to get a lower cooldown. So I would say, so the big takeaway with Lifeweaver is that, like, if there is a cooldown, a negative effect that is spammed, and it happens to be on targets that you're using Life Grip on frequently, then having a 4-second reduced cooldown on Life Grip is okay. However, there was a lot of discussion about, like, if you're not under pressure at all as Lifeweaver, you could just burn your Rejuvenating Dash and get 20 healing on your next Healing Blossom. And it's only a little bit of healing, so it's not great. However, it's something that you can channel before the fight starts. So, like, right as the fight's starting, you can just dash, and then you have 20 extra healing. You know? And then you can use your dash again, and you can get 20 extra healing. And you could use your dash again, and so on, and so on. And so basically, like, you can get, like, an extra, I would say probably 2 or 3 times, maybe even more per fight where you're using that, if you're not under a lot of pressure. So I'd say if you're not under a lot of pressure, yeah, you could use Life Weaving. I don't know, both perks are so unbelievably underwhelming, though. Like, either one is not going to be a terrible choice. It just is going to depend on the situation. If there's something that's really easy to cleanse, it's just more Life Grip, so that's good. If you're under no pressure and there's nothing easy to cleanse, then Life Weaving, you might as well use it that way. But again, you're burning your defensive cooldown for 20 more healing. I just don't know. All right, Lucio. Lucio, I'll say, is like a 2.5. Pretty tricky, right? So beat drop is amazing because you get this freaking super long amp. Really long amp, because it's not about, oh, amp during beat. Is it really that useful? Because you don't get your beat all the time. It's because it doesn't override your previous amp cooldown. It doesn't spend your amp. So you can amp a couple seconds, beat, and then you get amp again, right? So you can min-max it for sure. But the other thing is that, like, the amp lasts for the entirety of the beat duration, which I think is 6 seconds. So you have a, as opposed to a, what is it, 3 second? I think it's 3? Shoot, I should know this. 3 seconds, right. So it's 3. It's just a double amp, basically. It's good. It's really, really good. That being said, if you are moving around a lot, DPS Lucioing a decent amount, charging up your wall ride, so I'll kind of demonstrate that really fast. Charging up your wall ride with that little meter in the screen, yeah, you're not going to do it all the time, but you increase your damage by 50%, y'all. Like that's a good chunker. You know what I'm saying? What is that, like 70 damage? Boop with more distance. It's just a straight buff to the previous boop. In terms of that instance, right? Obviously, it's not available every boop, so I wouldn't say it's necessarily a net buff, but when you use it, it's insane. It's really, 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 really good. So I would say your situations may vary. I think both are really good. I would say if you're being a lot more aggressive in terms of like DPS and getting in there, probably Soundwave, Raider going to be a little bit better, but I don't think either one are a bad choice, to be honest with you. Major, I think, is going to be a little bit more easy to answer, because if you are being very proactive, very aggressive, off-angling, dueling, diving widows, froggering, you know, Reddit Lucio, Accelerando is good. I think people constantly underrate this. They're like, oh, well, how? I mean, having a 50% attack speed increase on a 12-second cooldown is just good. And more often than not, your amp is tied to action. It's not always backing up. It's often, it is tied to you doing things. And so being able to do things more is really good. It's your amp, it's your boop, it's your attack speed, it's everything. It's just good. That being said, if you aren't always inting, if you're playing more on controlling space, marking duelers, marking divers, and so on, noise violation just dramatically, you just amp everything, basically. It's just the whole map, essentially. So now, crucially, that is still only for every 3 seconds. But if you tie that with your beat drop, well, then all of a sudden you get a massive amp for 3 seconds, a massive amp for 6 seconds, and then another massive amp for 3 seconds. So it's definitely more of a, if the map provides for it, if the enemy composition, if you're not going in all the time, kind of marking, denying, booping, defense, noise violation's good. Otherwise, I see nothing wrong with Soundwave, Rider, and Accelerando. It's really just the Reddit Lucio versus the team Lucio, and sometimes you mix and match. Sometimes you mix and match. Mercy, I think this one's pretty straightforward, unless, like, even the problem with her minors is it's like the res thing is cool, but you have to complete the res. So it's not a guarantee that you can get off a safe res, because you can get killed in the res. You have to get the res and then you get the overhealth. Whereas Divine Momentum is just consistently good. Like every single movement that you do, super jump, slingshot, back bounce, whatever you do, like you're bouncing back, whether you're slingshotting, whether you're going up, whether you're going down, whether you're going through, it's just faster, and speed equals survivability. It's not just the distance that you travel, which is kind of cool, but it's also you just are harder to kill. And allowing Mercy to do things more aggressively that isn't tied to the cooldown that you use every 3 minutes is just way too good. Way too good. So I think Divine Momentum basically 100% of the time. And then Major, I would say Flash Heal 100% of the time when you're playing Mercy in the proper situation, which is pocketing off angles, whether that's a DPS tank or whatever, because it's just really freaking good. You know, if you get a target that's below half health, 150 health is nothing to sneeze at, and even fast 50 heal, if you don't get the timing right, is still nice. Like that's basically almost a full second extra of healing on a target that's being actively pressured. It's good. It's really, really good. And now it doesn't even consume your res. The problem... not the problem, but the situations in which you wouldn't choose that is in situations when you kind of have like an AoE clump, your teammate, and being able to get double damage boost is really nice. The situations when you play Mercy are generally not when teammates are clumped, but there are a lot of Mercy one tricks out there. They're going to play Mercy in every situation. So in those situations when you have like kind of a clumped up map, everyone's kind of grouped up around, it's pretty good to get an AoE damage boost on your tank that's also going to hit a DPS nearby. So that's just pretty consistently good. That being said, in the more spread out situations when you're moving around, off angling, Flash Heal is probably going to be a little bit better. Does Momentum help without getting a res? It can, but the problem is that you have to be careful that you don't slingshot and break the res. So in theory, yes, but it can also, it's a double-edged sword in that regard if you're not careful with it. Moira. I'll give this one a 2. There's potential, but I think there's probably going to be a more consistent one. And this was one I was thankful I researched because people made a lot of good points with it. I learned a lot of things about this one. First one is Destruction's Divide is probably not quite as good as you think, because more healing is generally not always going to be enough with Destruction's Divide. It's not going to necessarily heal through a lot of DPS ults. It's not quite enough to do that. 25% isn't quite enough, especially with the DPS passive. And while 25% more damage is nice, for sure, the problem that somebody pointed out to me is that when you're using your ult, I guess I can't demonstrate this right now, but when you're using your ult, you have your self-heal. But if you go to all damage, you lose the self-heal. And this isn't really documented. So, I'll demonstrate this now, where, I'm ulting, I'm healing myself, let's go. I focus damage, and notice I'm not healing myself anymore. So that's kind of a big deal. Now you're saying, well, you just go back to normal and then go back to damage. That's true, but it is kind of a turnoff to use it all for the damage, right? It's not a deal breaker for sure, but it is a negative onto a perk choice that's already pretty tricky, which really kind of makes me want to choose Ethical Nourishment. Because the key thing with Ethical Nourishment is it's good for off-angling, it's good for yourself, it's good for your teammates. 30 burst healing is always really good. Yeah. But to my understanding as well, from what I was hearing from other Moira players, is that it's also 30 healing on when it breaks. So if I 30 heal bounce, it's 30 heal now, it bounces away, obviously I'm full HP so it's not going to slow, but when the orb chain breaks, bounces back and comes back, it does another 30 burst health. And you can do this with your reversal major and get some really silly burst healing things if you can get the chaining just right, which is kind of unrealistic, but what is realistic is getting consistently 30 or 60 burst health Yes, it's the DPS passive we have to factor in there, but that's really, really good for big clumps of teammates that you want to heal, and it's also really good in duels, which is going to be the primary way of playing Moira, is off-angling and keeping yourself alive. And in that situation, 30 burst health, then another 30 burst health is really, really freaking good. Reversal's sick. Reversal's a lot of fun to play with. Reversal is probably a little bit underrated because there's all sorts of stuff that you can do with it. I'll demonstrate it really fast. You can heal an ally. And then reverse it by pressing the input again. You not only reverse that, you also reverse the bounces as well. So bounce there, and the reverses the bounces as well. It's amazing for keeping DPS uptime in duels. You fight here, it bounces, it goes away, no wait, come back, it does more. It's really, really good. And the problem is that it's competing with just probably the best perk that Moira has, which is Fade lasts a little longer, goes a little further in terms of the verticality, and you can cancel it manually by pressing shift again. So this was already a really good perk for Moira when they were split, because the jump height is great. In fact, I overrated the jump height because the longer duration means you can literally go from here all the way to a completely different side of the map. So that's really good for changing off angles. But the other thing as well is you don't even have to use the duration if you don't want to. You could just press it again and stop right away. And that was the biggest downside of longer duration, and why I initially didn't like it all that much, is because it just meant that you were inactive for longer. But you don't have to. You can if you want to, if you want to cross the map. This perk is just really, really good for survival. The ability to basically always be able to disengage fights at your leisure and to go to a point to where it's basically impossible to pursue you. You then don't even know where you are. You can go up, and then you can cancel it whenever you want to. So you can just be like, oh, nope, and just go back. Is just like incredibly, incredibly, incredibly potent. So all that being said, you're probably going to be playing Ethical Nourishment, Phantom Step most of the time with the way that you're supposed to play Moira. But map situationally, I could see Reversal. It's got some good bounces, can be useful. Destruction's Divide can also be useful. I just am not sure that if it's worth the opportunity cost of giving up Ethical Nourishment, especially with the way that the DPS stack and it's only being 25%. Yeah, so Moira perk's pretty simple, but I don't think the other perks are bad. Your mileage may vary. Wu Yang, on the other hand, is pretty much straightforward. It's a 1. Always choose balance. Overflow is cool, but again, like we said with the Juno, you don't want to have to use your mobility cooldown to do more damage or do more healing. Your mobility cooldown should focus on just you moving and you rotating. And yeah, 10 ammo is nice. 30% healing, 33% healing is nice as well, but it's not enough to want me to change how I'm going to be using my shift, my mobility cooldown. Not worth it. Again, opportunity cost, when you compare this to balance, which means that you're increasing your restorative stream's passive healing by 40% for 2 seconds. Again, that's 10 more healing per second every time you hit a damage orb. Every time. Not a full damage, not a direct. Any damage that you do, 10 healing more second for 2 seconds. So if you guys are doing the math here, if you're doing damage for 20, 30%, 40% of a fight, even 40% uptime, keep in mind that 1 instance of damage for 2 seconds, right? It lasts for 2 seconds, right? If you have that uptime for even 30, 40%, you're going to be getting so much more healing on whatever's getting the target. And it also doesn't require you to focus on something else. Wearing is already like min-max enough. Like he's already taking a lot of your brainwave space as it is. And balance just allows you to just do what you normally do and just do it better. Major, there's a little bit more nuance here. Falling Rain, if it's a tank that you can easily abuse, if you're not having to bend around tight corners where your orbs can easily catch on walls. Because remember, you're only doing 20% more damage if you hit all 3 orbs. If you lose an orb because the hitbox is bigger, you will be doing less damage. So it's okay if you got a tank to abuse. Otherwise, Ebb and Flow is better because it doesn't make your projectiles more awkward to weave around. And more importantly, it's opportunity cost. You just get more value with your wave because it deals 50% decreased damage while rewinding. Yeah, that's true. But it does the same heal. So you get more damage in a small room on bounce back. And more importantly, you just get a heal and then a heal again. And so if you're fighting in small rooms, if you're trying to defend yourself, if you're trying to defend your team, by the way, that heal also gives you that amp heal effect, right? So if you, let's say, you miss your tank with that initial wave and it bounces back. I've had a lot of times where I miss the tank and it bounces back and it hits my tank and it gives them that amp heal effect. It's huge. 3 orbs is less damage to armor tanks. That's huge. I mean, even less reason to choose it. I saw some pro players. I saw Ultraviolet pick it versus a Zarya, and he was farming damage, right? But that was like one of the few situations where I think that it actually made sense. So wave cooldown just got increased to 14 seconds. This definitely makes this weaker. The problem is that Tri-Shot is still niche. The problem isn't that Tri-Shot, is that wave 1 is broken. It's good. It's on a longer cooldown now for sure. It's the fact that Tri-Shot still is situational when it's actually good. That's the problem. Yeah, breakpoints at 225 for sure. That's true. There's some circumstances where it's okay, but yeah. Zenyatta. Ascendance is great on certain maps where you can rotate laterally. It's pretty good. It is one of the more challenging perks to utilize, so I would recommend trying and experimenting with it a lot. You'd be surprised at the number of things you can do with it. You can avoid splash damage versus characters like Pharah. You can rotate a lot easier, and keep in mind you're rotating silently, which is really valuable in certain maps. It requires you to be creative, whereas Transcendent Condemnation is just kind of consistently good. So I would say Transcendent Condemnation most of the time when the map's good. The other one is more tricky. I think Dual Harmony most of the time is going to be better because it's just being able to keep an orb on your tank and an orb on your DPS or whatever. It's just more ult charge, even if it's 70% of what it initially was. Because remember, the grace period for going behind a wall with Harmony Orb is now 5 seconds, not 3. Or that was changed not too long ago. And so it's a lot easier to keep 2 Harmony Orbs up without compromising your damage than it was before. Focus Destruction is good, but shouldn't be using Alt Fire all the time when there's something on your screen. Remember, the rules then is Primary Fire if you see something, most of the time, Alt Fire if you don't, or if you're moving, rotating behind cover or whatever. Because even with the faster charge rate, you're still doing less DPS than your Primary Fire. So you generally want to be using Focus Destruction if you don't have anything that you can see, like a second target to Harmony Orb, which occasionally happens, and you just are occasionally ducking behind cover charging and you're rotating a lot. So Focus Destruction is fine. You're going to get less mileage out of it than you think you are, and you're going to get more mileage out of Dual Harmony than you think you are because of some of the changes to how he's been played. So I would say Dual Harmony most of the time, Transcendent Condemnation most of the time, but maybe in certain map situations you could use Focus Destruction, you could use Ascendance where you're allowed to use rotations, or where you don't have a lot of Primary Fire damage uptime. Okay, well, that's going to be it, y'all. We finished all the characters. Obviously, that took a decent amount of research, so I appreciate all of you guys for your help in the Discord, on Twitter, obviously the pro players as well for giving me their feedback on what perks make sense. Obviously, this is not set in stone. These could be tweaked, these could be patched, these could be changed. These are also within the context of patch notes. Like we just saw with the Wuyong wave nerf, like that perk becomes slightly less attractive. But obviously, this is more about educating your choices rather than telling you objectively what is always better. So obviously, these can change. If you guys have any takes on any ones that I got wrong, just let me know in the comments. Yeah, and obviously, like I said, to keep my videos sponsor free, I really rely on y'all's support, whether it's through Patreon, Twitch, or YouTube. Obviously, I don't just ask for support without providing something. I try to make sure that these videos are high quality. And also, if you are joining me on Patreon, YouTube membership, Twitch subscriptions, tier 3+, you're going to have access to, you have early access to videos. You're going to have access to a secret, super fun Discord channel where all sorts of fun and parties and explosions happen. And then also pick up games. And at the highest tier, I believe, for Patreon as well, you get a shout out at the end of the video. So there's all sorts of perks. I try to make sure that I'm giving back to the community. But yeah, without that y'all's help, I would not be able to keep these videos sponsorship free. So I like to make sure that these videos are focused on the topics and only the topics. So I appreciate you guys for the support. And I'll see you guys next video.